the publishing industry missed out on this book.
There's deep and interesting characters, but as pitching this to people, I would so focus on the plot elements.
You're going to see a bunch of other booktubers cover this book. I know it.
Everything is firmly entrenched from Lovecraft.
Book one is the ground floor.
It's hard to put this in a box of like, oh, each POV is a TV episode. Like,
did you just mock me?
Yes.
What the Welcome back to another To The Ramble episode. I'm one of your hosts, Austin.
I'm the other host, Richard.
We are doing a spoiler-free and spoiler-full book review, spoiler-free for the first 10-ish minutes or so, about the book Discovery, Strange Eons, Book 1, and it's another one of those special episodes where we have the authors, J.A.J. Mitten, John, Amy, and Jacob, here with us to discuss the book and review it in front of them. Hello, welcome again.
We're so excited and slightly frightened.
Yeah, and I've got tissues ready.
For those who haven't seen, we had a spoiler-free interview and talk about this book that came out on the channel a couple months ago. We filmed that yesterday, so we're coming off fresh with the conversation with them. Forewarning, we're friends with them. Even though we will have inherent bias in that way, we've described how this book for us, and we'll give you in the spoiler-free, is a 5-star. That's no secret at this point.
Yeah.
And we're going to try in this spoiler-free section to share with the audience of who would this be for as well, of like what particular type of reader would want to read this book. And we this is what I love about having the authors here, because we always like to start with the book information. And we can just ask them.
Oh, we don't have to do the research. We just ask them to say. Wonderful.
I have here ask a question in my notes. So that's what I'll do. For the background of this book, this is indie, first time published from the three of you. And I got to ask this question because this happened off camera yesterday when we were chatting. Part of the inspiration for this book comes from a quote of, "I think I'm going to blow it, Jeff." Could we get some background on the inspiration for Discovery, your magnum opus? Please tell us where this came from.
Yeah, during COVID, we as a family, Jacob had come home from college. College was canceled. Everything was canceled. And we just started watching Survivor, the reality show, where the contestants get kicked off the island with the host, Jeff Probst, who's been hosting this since Jacob was an infant. And
I believe it was 1914 was when Jeff Probst started.
I believe that's when Jeff started. So like it was just like this thing where we got together and we were just looking at these just nutcases on this island trying to survive, and we weren't sure what was going to happen. Nobody was sure what was going to happen. Like, is this thing going to kill everybody? Are we going to starve to death? Am I ever going to eat green beans again? There were just questions just came at us every day, all the time. Are we all? Yeah. Like, where's the toilet paper? All of these questions. And so, like, Survivor was just a time, and we came together every single night, and we ate Oreos and watched Survivor and made fun of it. And we got to the part of the series where it always happens, where a contestant is like sure thing to win.
Yeah.
And just at the very last challenge does something incredibly stupid and just totally loses it. So we call that moment, "I think I'm going to blow it, Jeff." That's what the contestant will say directly to the host. You know, it's like Jeff Probst might ask them, "Well, you want to do this or you want to do this?" And the answer is, "I think I'm going to blow it, Jeff."
Yeah.
So that whole theme of like the collapse of society, of people hunkering, going, what is going on with humanity, and how people just blow it.
Yeah.
Like just the inherent propensity of people just to blow it. And we were just all, like marinating in that. And that's when Discovery was born.
Yep.
Amazing.
So many times through the writing of Discovery, one of us would say to the other,
I think I'm going to blow it, Jeff.
I'm going to blow it, Jeff.
And that inspiration comes from this book. For those who are curious about picking up, of course, there will be an affiliate link in the description below. So go check out the book. But this apocalypse story about a Cthulhu-type discovery, and this blurb information, Cthulhu-type discovery, cosmic horror thriller. What does humanity do? How do they react to a discovery from the perspective of I think I can aptly say a deranged game show host? Would that be apt?
deranged former
game
Thank
show
you,
host.
Richard.
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
Disgraced.
Manny has been disgraced. Yeah.
And this is set in the 1990s. So this is happening on Earth as if this happened several decades ago, and it pulls you into the feel of the 90s. And Rich, did you want to add some other descriptors to help people out?
Yeah, for spoiler-free section, this book does give you the promise of ultimately there are cosmic fingers interfering with humanity's evolution. Some kind of game is afoot. But ultimately, the story is about how
Humanity blows it.
we don't need the gods to mess everything up.
Yeah.
Humans are perfectly capable of doing that on their own. But also, in a similar way, we're also capable of picking the pieces back up. And so it is a very human story with the cosmic element woven through as a nice mystery undertone.
Yeah, I'd say for people that it's not just a thriller, it's funny. And people that kind of like an absurdist, some absurdist books, because there's a lot of characters that I'm not going to spoil here, but just crazy absurd characters that will go, wait, that is such an oxymoron. It's so funny.
There are almost no normal characters. Which one?
Why? It's a
Why would you
hodgepodge.
Why would you ever have just like a random average Joe? No, all of these characters are a reason why they're a POV character.
Yeah.
They're a little bit nutty. They're a little bit out there. And
Yes.
it's fun. They have a fun personality.
I think you guys may want to back up a little bit because we all lost internet from you. You kind of locked up and everything went away for a minute.
It's probably fine on their ends.
I think
Okay.
that was just you, Dad. I can see them just fine.
Oh, then it's probably just me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cut me out.
They're fine. They're fine. As long as when that happens, as long as you can follow, just keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it records
me out.
all on
I'm
everyone's.
I'm gonna
level.
tell John how to do YouTube now.
I'm not good at this.
Jacob, you got to
Sorry,
get on
guys.
this. Get on him. Come on. What are you doing?
I've tried. I've done my best.
He gave up a long time ago.
And at this point, Rich and I have talked about this book several times. We're excited to actually get into spoilers. And I kind of want to make clear here. So, first, what do other people think outside of just Rich and I? Jenny Warts says this is cosmic game board like no other. Astonishing, brilliant, unsettling, stunning. Philip Chase, Esme Rosalind from Grimdark Magazine, Brian Bell from BellTube, and Philip Chase, booktuber as well, and author of The Way of Eden, all give this significantly high praise. The book is just releasing recent to this video being out. It came out, was it May 13th? Is that the correct day?
No, May 15th on Amazon.
May 15th on Amazon. It is out by the time you are all watching this now. And would ask you the very unsurprising, what is your out of 5-star spoiler-free rating of the book, Rich?
Well, before I get to mine, I do want to say an additional person. I think we should value their opinion.
Yeah.
Kendall from our Discord
Yes.
and your guys's on Talking Story here. She said her quote is, "The publishing industry missed out on this book." And I value her opinion quite highly on books. She's the big reason why I got to read
Lonesome Dove.
I value her opinion and gives her seal of approval. Myself, I give this a 5-star. This book,
Dude, really?
yeah,
Wow.
no, this
No.
with
that's
how
right.
our rating system works.
Psych. It was 3.
Now, that's not what you told us when you finished the book, Richard.
Yeah.
What did you tell them when you finished the book?
Oh, I told
That
him,
he wasn't
maybe
sure.
a 2.5.
Yeah.
No, I was. We actually
cagey.
talked about this when we were doing the blurb, and I was between a 4.75 and a 5 for me, and so we were going between it, and I settled on a 5. I think the proper word to explain my thoughts is I was floored.
And I would agree, 5 stars for me as well. And at this point, it's no shock to the authors listening in. We've had prior books where we've had the author on. Shout out to Adrian Gibson, amazing guy. Where it was uncomfortable because I didn't like his book, and we had to discuss through that. But I'm excited to dive deep. To make clear, I've given so many praises in books and online at this point that I don't want it to regurgitate like it sounds fake. But just everybody, it's loved this book, floored me. I was also looking at the right word to give this. When we say 5-star, means floored. But we'll also have some cool questions for you all. Maybe some things to actually ask as well. That isn't just full. Oh, you had something, Rich?
Well, I do want to get into this out.
Yeah.
I can't really give my criticisms at all in a spoiler-free section. So in the spoiler section, I will have questions. It's not big ones, though. I mean, that's the thing. It's still a 5-star book. Like, I get to question the authors a little bit.
And what did you get? What were the highest rated categories for you?
Oh, the 2 categories that I have the highest is plot and world building.
Likewise.
Both 5 stars.
If you had to say there was a lowest category, what would it be?
Overall, it would probably be characters.
Okay.
And we'll get into why. Again, it's not a low score. It's just the lowest out of the high scores.
Lowest out of, gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so.
Yeah, I had same plot and world were also best categories for me. If I had to say lowest, and they're all above 4, so just spoiler for that. But if I had to say lowest, thought-provokingness, and then I had characters. I think I had a little higher than you, so we'll talk it out.
We'll talk about it.
Authors, do you want to say anything else before we get into full spoilers and start diving deep into the book?
No, I
I'll
thought
accept
this would go a
nothing.
lot
We're
worse.
floor 2.
Sorry, what was that, Jacob?
I expect 5s across the board from Richard, or I will riot.
All right,
A 5 from you, Richard. It's a huge honor. So.
Yeah, this
it's an
is
honor. Yeah, thank you.
unbelievable, guys. Unbelievable.
and this is so we're gonna give a spoiler warning now. We've talked a lot of. We've been basically discussing spoiler free for the past video, talking online. So this would be the first time we can actually dive deep.
Yes.
So spoiler warning. Quick pause from the episode. We were just talking with Talking Story, 3 authors who wrote their own book. And our sponsor of today's episode is WorldAnvil, which is perfect for this episode because WorldAnvil is a tool, a website. Go to worldanvil.com where you can go map out characters, plots, world building elements to any story you want to create. And if you want to end up on the Tutor Ramble podcast with a 5-star book like Discovery, well, maybe WorldAnvil will help you with that. Worldanvil.com.
Quality of novel not guaranteed.
Not guaranteed.
But they do have really cool map building tools we do books. If you want to write a cool book and you want to map out your characters, map out your world and all these details, they have some great tools. You can also use it for D&D. Great tools. Go give them a shot because they have a free trial. You could check out a bunch of the tools for free. And then if you really like and you want more, you can use the code Ramble to get 51% off their membership.
Yep.
And it's great.
It's awesome. Hey, just do it. Why not? Go ahead.
Give it a shot. Why not?
See you back in the episode. Without further ado, emotional impact. Would you give it out of 5 stars?
4.75.
Me too.
Yeah. I
Yes.
thought
And our word for that is
incredibly spectacular.
Yeah, absolutely spectacular. Yep.
So, yeah, the fact that I had to call them up after part 1 and go, guys, part 1, I was hooked.
Well, what emotions do you think the book's going for? Then we can obviously ask them what they were going for.
I imagine it's trying to go for your kind of shock, twist, turn, mystery, and then personally, there was some great. For me, the big character moments with Oliver Doss that's probably my most emotional scene for the book. But overall, it's the mystery, right? I mean, the whole thing carrying you through there is you want to know more. You want to know more about this kind of world and the thing that we're uncovering, we're discovering about it. So, I mean, I imagine that's the key thing you're trying to get out of people is you want to stoke their curiosity. It's my guess.
Yeah, I do. I love puzzle boxes. Puzzle boxes. And they're just so, when you have these like intricate stories where you're just like, kind of like led along by, this thing is answered and this thing is asked and it kind of keeps you pulled through the plot. I mean, those are my favorite kind of books. And I think we all just want to write what we want to read, right? So, I mean, I'm really glad that worked for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think our favorite moments, like writing the book together, were we never really asked each other what happens next, but somebody would, have a weird dream and come to us the next day and go, I think this should happen next. And the other 2 people go, ooh, that's weird. Those are the twists and turns that we like to do. So that was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I think that puzzle box mystery for me was just the thriller aspect of it. And I say absurdist in the fun. I love my absurdism, and the way I'm using that term is just putting together a bunch of things that shouldn't make sense but do. You know, when you have the nun that's actually not a nun, that is kind of like an alien as well, thrown on top of, and then there's like the former Nazi SS treasure hunter, and that you just have a lot of absurd elements and characters that make it so that the toughest thing to do with these kind of things that I feel is when you have so many elements that could be seen as nonsensical, but then to be deeply invested and care as if it's real is amongst the hardest things to do. Why I love Discworld so much is it's absurd, yet you believe everything is set up in a way to make it all like that. That's not a stretch. Like everything that was in there is not a stretch of the imagination to go, of course that's a real person. Of course that exists. And so that was really cool to read. And also the funny elements of it too. But I kind of want to point out specific scenes. And I'm curious, before we mention any scenes, did you guys
actually mention your score? I don't think you did.
I did. Yeah, I said me too. 4.75.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we had the same exact score for it. I'm curious if you all had a particular scene that you thought readers would go, "Oh, that's the best scene of the book." Did you? Any of you have opinions on that?
No, but there were many scenes that I thought, "Wow, I hope this doesn't suck."
Which one comes to the forefront?
Oh man, I mean, people reading the prologue I thought could get upset. The whole chapter where Lucia is meeting with Sister Mary and uncovers this whole backstory of the creation of the world, I thought, oh, I hope this lands for people. And to hear that does land makes me really happy. But as far as the comedy goes, seeing my dad embody Manny was always amazing.
Manny is definitely the funniest.
You're always worried. I think we have some weird favorite scenes because, we know who worked. We know we all came together and worked on a scene. It was
the part with the actual discovery where Manny is, he's basically acting drunk, but he's, under the influence of Cthulhu. He's behaving very badly, and it had all of this kind of like horror juxtaposed with comedy. Was incredibly fun to write, and it was one of the earliest scenes that we did write, and one of the scenes that never changed very much from every version that we ever wrote. That even that version of the discovery, that scene was in the first version of the book we wrote, and as a flashback, and all of that stuff where he is just incredibly insensitive to the people on board, and it was almost just kind of like giddy liberation to write this man who was off the hook,
who was out there
and totally unresponsive to the situation. Like he just wasn't in reality at all, and it was so fun to write. So Manny's fun to write, Lucia is fun to write.
Valdemar's fun to write.
And Valdemar's very fun to write.
I have some quotes to bring up in a later section from that will show people that, because some people will be listening on that didn't read the book. They just like to listen on anyways to bring people on. Sorry, Jacob, I cut you off. I don't
know. Please, some of the moments that I think are also the funniest are moments that my mom tried to annoy me because I didn't want Voldemar in the book originally. Voldemar originally had no purpose. This was just I didn't want a Nazi in the book, and there was suddenly I think Voldemar started as somebody's gardener that was waving hello as a and
can you put that more on camera?
No, I'm glad that was out of frame. That was on purpose. But.
Our Discord's going to capture that and make it a sticker. Don't do it, Slay.
Oh, God. Don't say that.
Slay, no.
But I remember towards one of the last drafts that we were writing, I would just get texts from my mom. It was like, I'm doing this Voldemar chapter again. You're not going to like it. I was like, why? She goes, I gave him pool floaties. It's ridiculous. Why did you do that? And then I would read it and go, that's pretty good. That should stop.
And then you read it and it's like, yeah, right. That plays. That actually plays.
Well, actually.
It's like going on to that, that thing about I think I'm going to blow it, Jeff. Humanity is funny. And even in their darkest moments, they are really funny. And I don't like books that don't acknowledge that take themselves too seriously and don't have characters that have anything funny to say. I mean, because that's how we are. It's what we do. We're weird and we're funny.
I was going to say this in the character section, but it's so relevant now. This is just one of the scenes with him, just to show Voldemort's personality here. Tony's talking to him and says, "And what do you do?" "I seek artifacts of the oldest cultures on Earth." Tony hardened his stare. "Aryan cultures?" Voldemort folded his arms and regarded him. "Much older." "Nazis killed a lot of people," Tony noted. "So did Stalin," Voldemort replied. "And Mao Zedong, Tojo, Leopold, Franco. We don't talk about them so much." Tony shrank back. Voldemort, however, did not shrink. He kept advancing. "Maybe one day you will be asking ridiculous questions by your grandson. Hey, Mr. Grandvater, how did you tap on keyboard came in 1992 when now cars fly and everyone an astronaut in first space was? You will say, times change, Horsenschneider. And so have I." He snorted and lowered his voice. "I hope you have stupid great-grandchildren, too." And so he's kind of just, the way that this Nazi defends his worldview, it's just funny to go like, oh yeah, you're going to be dumb one day too, Tony, grandson.
The fun thing about his character is you feel the age.
You do.
It's someone who...
He's so removed.
Well, this guy has been for like over 50 years, has now like constantly been berated. Like, yeah, he's a former Nazi. How many times has that been brought up? And like, new grandson comes like, "Oh my God, you're Nazi." He's like, "I've been hearing that for 50 years, grandson. Shut up." I get it.
Yeah.
like none of you, like, you're just so young. You don't get it. I don't need you critiquing my life. I've heard this for 50 years. Shut up.
He's a treasure hunter for artifacts.
Yeah, it's just so removed. They're just like, I'm so done. I'm so done with all of it. Moving on.
And you have all these characters like Voldemort, like Manny DiMartini's one of the best names, and I love that name. Just how did you guys come up with Manny DiMartini?
Jacob?
That was actually me and my mom sitting on like the back porch. Just, I think it was like first draft of the book when it was now what is going to be book 3 that we were writing with a bunch of flashbacks in it.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, if this happens, then this has to happen to start it. And, you know, we finally like worked our way back to this discovery. And we're like, what if there was this, I think Mom was the one who said, what if there was this Geraldo Rivera character that who I don't know if I was the only one that didn't know who Geraldo Rivera was, that did this broadcast of like finding out where the Titanic was and opening Al Capone's vault. And there was this big television broadcast. And like, what if we had this and there's this weird guy that's just the worst and makes this discovery accidentally through no motivations or skills of his own. He just happens upon it. And I'm like, okay, I like that. And it was just us saying names to make each other laugh. And Manny DiMartini came up.
That's great. I think for if we're talking emotional impact, those scenes that got me were a lot of your heartbeat type scenes. So the discovery itself, the prologue, and the encore, where you set up specifically in the prologue and encore, where you have the narrator and the gods narrating and then going back to the actual scene itself and this increasing heartbeat and thriller and doom, 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 doom. And then so those are some of my favorite thrilling scenes. And but I kind of was struggling by the time I finished the book to go like sometimes when I finish a book and I go, that's the scene, that is the moment. And clearly in a lot of Brandon Sanderson books, it's, they have the Sanderlanche, or you look at something, the midpoint in a lot of Emma Wang books. But in this one, it's one of those that I'd describe as just, because it's this puzzle box unfolding this mystery, I was just engaged. I was wanting to find out more. It wasn't like there was a certain moment that went, holy sh.
Well, that's the thing, is
one of those.
There's ultimately, you don't particularly see the driving force from the beginning. So here's the emotional like twist, and where I was the most emotional early on was I really liked the prologue. And that was exciting. But what really got me is part 1 with Nessa. And that whole structure, and maybe that's due to the plot, but I loved how it bounced back and forth between the letter, the video, and then actual newsroom and scene. And we have multiple mysteries going on at the exact same time.
Yep.
Of first you have Nessa. Why is she important? She's been thrown into a position that's clearly above her pay grade, but everyone is deferring to her. So now there's that mystery of like, even she's acknowledging, like, why am I here? Okay, we're going to find out that mystery number one. Now we have the letter and we have the diary of, help me out, guys.
Oliver Duff.
Griffith Tran.
Griffith Tran.
Griffith Tran.
Oh, Griffith.
We have the
yeah.
autograph by the letter by Griff Tran. And so right out of the gate and just how it's structured, we get his entry letter. I'm going, because my first thought was it's set up. It's like, oh, this is 10 days or something before discovery. So I'm right out of the gate and we're going through just day one. I'm going, oh, okay, this is the book. The book is going to be Griff Tran's diaries up to the discovery, and we will have little inner but that's the whole book. That was my initial thought, and I'm going, okay, this could be fun. But I just didn't think too much. Like, okay, I've seen this. But then we pulled out immediately. We skipped forward quite a bit of like the video is now layered in, and then not only the video, what's on the back of these the whole manuscript that Griff is writing, and it's now medical reports and detail. Like all of this fuels this data, and then by the end of part one, we see the alien, we see Cthulhu, and we release it to the world. I'm like, I thought that would have been the end of the book. That's end of part one. Oh,
you're so right.
But like, it is perfectly handled on how it bounces back between the important mysteries, and it all comes together of both Nessa's mystery, Griff and his accounting of his discovery, along with Manny DiMartini's videos, and then on top of that, all the medical reports sprinkled in that gives a fuller picture that is much better than Griff actually writing all of those 100%. Details, but it's actually on the back of all the pieces of paper. All of that worked wonderfully. Where I was most like emotionally engaged in the plot of like, I have no idea what's going on, no idea what's going to happen next. That was
you're so right, and that whole section now that you're mentioning it, that whole part one is just a massive heartbeat of switching to Gran, Nessa, Manny DiMartini, Gran, Nessa, and until you culminates to the discovery itself. And yeah, you're so right, because that whole section is that's essentially what floored us, I think, in getting us to the rest of the book, is going, okay, this is different. Where is this going? And for you to hook the readers with something, and basically what is phenomenal that I think you did here is the promise, progress, payoff in a typical book is it's sent to Rich and I promised, hey, a discovery. It's the book title. We're going to get Cthulhu type. And then you over exceeded what you over delivered from that promise of when, oh, here's a discovery, and way, way more than you thought you were getting yourself into. It's actually a God-esque, cosmic, massive chessboard about this discovery and humanity's fall, rise, who knows. So that, just from maybe that's just something that...
Well, and I was talking to them about this. It's a risk. There's a risk of the delivery is paid, like the promise is paid off in part one. Basically, like you have been given Cthulhu. Like, what do you read? Like, what's the driving force to continue reading? Yeah, and ultimately, it's the mystery of like, because at first I'm going, ooh, because we end off part one, Nessa, like Griff going like, hey, I've been connected to the hive mind of humanity's souls. Yeah, Nessa is important to you, and she is an important connection you need to make. Like, I am leaving her to you. And you go, okay, wow. Are we going to learn more about Nessa and this relationship between them? What's going on? Cut. We cut away. We go to some Oliver Dawes, which great through line character. But that, I think, is the harder thing, that the book requires a bit of trust from the author.
A lot of trust.
Yes.
Because
And you ask like, what's our favorite scene? It's like, I remember these were all of our fears. Like, it's like that beginning, like you say, it's like, it's just the instigating incident really that
of the whole
catapults
series.
everything.
I mean, it's the instigating incident of the series.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can either write that as book one, or you can put that at the beginning of your book and start building what the series is going to be.
Right.
And so like, we just decided, I mean, at one point we did say, is the Discovery a novella, an introductory novella? Is it what everybody wants?
Yeah.
Maybe, like
we had originally
what is it, like 100 pages or so? I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe,
a while ago
maybe
we
less.
had we had written pretty much the entire documentary of Manu's journey. It is written, like the entire documentary, that we were just going to put as a novella and be like, maybe this just goes before the book, but then you can't really start the book without that, so that's kind of annoying. But I think with puzzle box narrative, you have to have like, okay, setup, and then you're going to put a payoff, and that payoff has to be 50% payoff and 50% more mystery.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, like, if you look at the bare bones of the book, we need to go here, then we need to go here, and then end off here, right? Beginning, middle, and end. But to get someone to be interested from here to here is what's difficult.
Yeah,
So we have to have these little payoffs to make them feel like, okay, maybe I understand. And when you don't have anybody next to you that's not writing the book, it can feel like, I hope this works.
Well, emotionally speaking, the hardest transition for the book to me was being so invested in Nessa, and then I was pretty invested in Oliver Doss, but not necessarily because of him, but because of the story he was showing us of, okay, post-discovery, like, what's the world like? Very interesting. So I'm interested there. And then we go to Tony. And right out of the gate, I'm going like, who's this Tony character? Doesn't seem like he relates to anything that we've been reading so far.
You didn't like the introductory Duke of Arrakis line of he was a Dune fan.
Yeah.
Come on.
But no, like, again, it works, but that is the sticking point of you're going based off pure mystery of like, how does Tony connect with it? That's kind of the driving factor is you have to trust that the puzzle pieces are going to come together. And like, it didn't take very long for me to get invested in that storyline. But I know before Voldemort, I'm going, okay, how does Tony connecting here? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, when I think back to the book, this happens with other books where some of the plot lines and point of views can somewhat blend. If you go, okay, was that entire point of view justified? Whereas with this, each of the five, I guess you could say five main ones. We have like Nessa's, Oliver Doss through line, Ashanti, Lucia, Tony's. But you have each one with Ashanti's looks at the religious and occult-ish and like how was the reaction to the apocalypse there and focus on religious outbreak and then you have outbreak just religious sentiments and then you have Oliver's, which is just focused on airlifts and technology and so each time you switch to a different point of view than Tony and the Nazi and Sorrow with the nun, it's all focused on this treasure hunting and mystery deeper level. So each one almost gave you a little mini TV episode that was a different taste. That even if you're like, this isn't my favorite one, to me, each one had like a different piece of the puzzle that I was in my head going, how does this connect? And then when you gave those snippets of Oliver's letter to Tony, or not to Tony, but to the family there, and you go, oh, okay, what how is this connected? And seeing it spliced together like that.
When Tony finally is reading some of the information of the prior prophets of going, oh, this puts a new context of were these alien accounts true? And so that's adding that layer of mystery that you really love to see.
Yeah.
But again, it's hard to put this in a box of like, oh, each POV is a TV episode. Like,
did you just mock me?
Yes.
What the hell was that?
But I totally look. Richard's right. It's really hard because not only does like a little bit of the world gets unveiled and the connections start to form, but also the entire like style is different. Like the beginning is a thriller, and then you go into epistolary with Doss, and then you go into kind of like gothic with Tony. a falling apart plantation, and it's like the style somewhat shifts as you move through and go along. So there's so many things that are changing that just made us go, man, I don't know if this entertains anyone but us, but we're having a great time.
There's precedent for this. David Mitchell's Cloud Atlas. I'm a very big fan of that book, and a lot of the dangers of that book. And when I ask people to read that and how they say they get caught up at the switch, with the first switch that goes, from these diaries to these diaries, and they're, quite a bit of time apart, and it takes a while for you to see the connection between these two characters. That when I first asked John to read it, he got livid, and David Mitchell takes a much bigger risk. He interrupts the first part, just drops it in mid-sentence, just. Wow. That was ballsy. It's not as ballsy as that. Yeah. So we just couldn't even take that much of a risk, but there's precedent for that kind of narrative, and we're so grateful to have had that example of how to get that done. And I did look very closely at how David Mitchell did his switches, which is immediately plunge the reader into action. And, Oliver Doss's diaries at the very beginning, he drops a lot of his subjects. It's always like verb, verb, verb. And he's just like, went here, did this, curtains closed. And so it's just like boom, 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 boom. So it's almost kind of like grabbing the reader by the scruff and dragging them into another world that is, violence and gunfights and what's on the news and why I'm boarding up my home and why there's, food stacked up. And so I learned that from David Mitchell. If you're going to switch, hit it hard. Same with Tony. You come into Tony's world, it's just like grandfather's dragging him out of bed. Things are on fire and he's having a dream. And there's somebody there that he doesn't like and he doesn't know why. So all of these switches are supposed to do this kind of reader dragging, and I'm very aware that we might lose somebody. Hyper aware.
Well, I think it's hard to compare us to David Mitchell too, because we kind of cheated. I mean, in many ways, As far as that structure goes, it feels like we kind of cheated to make it a little bit easier, because we tried to have each part do double duty. Not only are you getting thrown into the action, but there's also a order of things that kind of have to happen, right? Like Sister Mary is showing up, sometimes Sorrow is showing up in these chapters, and that has to happen in a certain order. But as far as the world events goes, say we're in DOS, for example, and Providence starts coming up about them wanting to interfere with the RLIF program. Now that we're talking about Providence, let's shift over to Ashanti Oko, and we can learn much more about Providence. And that makes the transition a little bit easier, knowing that it's still a structure that requires a lot of trust. It just hopefully that helps,
But, we cross our fingers in this genre. Epic fantasy jumps around a world all the time with multi POVs and stuff. So that's we just tried to.
Yeah, we're just trying to pay attention to who's come before us, and I don't think we're taking huge risks, but I understand why some readers would say that we were, because it's a lot to ask.
That trust is a lot.
It's a lot to ask.
A lot of, especially especially trust with you see a novel like this and it's debut authors of you read a prologue and go, it's not like you have the credibility or the author's innate trust of, I've read plenty of series from these guys, so I'll read this, and you don't have that. You're from the get-go going, trust these no names at this point.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think that's why some of our mentors were really hard on us to be so brutally active inside the story. To be like, you have to get the reader's trust, you have to be so brutally active, and you have to do things in a certain order, and you have to, because this is how people like to read their stories, and you have to lay out, just like this, the beats of the characters and how they unfold. And I had to take all of that apart in Nessa and reassemble that so that it read like a thriller. on the advice of our mentors, because she said it was like, it's so important for you to get this first section right, that's what you're going to have to do. And I was
so
really
it's so
grateful.
amazing that worked for you.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
And-
no, that is where the trust was
I'm glad you brought that up, yeah.
completely like earned is
Right.
because I can just imagine trying to do this in a quote, maybe safe is maybe the wrong word, but just a more standard way of even the way you guys were thinking it, of the discovery, all that stuff being either flashback or just a novella where you start right out of the gate with these kind of characters. And I definitely don't think it would have worked as well as having it this structure where you get that right from the beginning and you're given enough nuggets to look for in the future parts, but you do get a full delivery. You get the full promise of, the discovery's here. Now what? And that was like the biggest thing in my mind immediately after is, now what are we doing? Like, okay.
And you're totally right. You're alternatively. Oh, sorry, Jacob.
I thought it was interesting you brought up, Richard. The thing that kept you going in that Nessa part was like, the mystery of who Nessa is in this connection with Griff. We thought Howard saying "air it all" was going to be, people got to turn the page on that, So it's interesting that Nessa was what hit for you. Well,
it's the underlying question after, because it's not like Nessa specifically. It's the kind of net, the mental net of humanity of like Griff was laying the seeds and the groundwork for something bigger, and I wanted to know what did he see in Nessa? What did he see that this was such an important meeting? Because right now we don't see why it was important for them to be connected. And so, but on like air it out now, like I can conceptually understand like collapse of humanity. Like I can get that, but because I kind of know what's gonna happen there. I have no idea what's happening with Nessa, and that's what I thought was like gonna be a focus, and it's not. But I'm given enough mysteries to like carry it through, and also it is kind of delivered upon is the humanity's mental net. But we're talking about a bunch of this other stuff of emotions. Let's kind of close this one up. Is there any other emotional scenes kind of want to touch on?
No, we touched on a lot of the scenes. Emphasizing what all you said, I think it really is like a masterclass in mystery, and want to focus on that. That's a good takeaway for just digesting this book. Of that part one, you promised that you set up for readers and definitely for Rich and I, like, hey, wait till you get to all 5 parts of this novel. And that's why I'll save this for plots because I wanted to talk about the midpoint section with Lucia and that reveal. Let's save that for plot though.
Yeah.
And let's go on to thought-provoking.
Thought-provokingness.
What did you give thought-provokingness out of 5 stars?
I gave this one a 4.5. Thought it was spectacular. What did you give?
I gave a 4.25. Really great.
Alrighty.
Now, what do you think the major theme and message of the story was?
Jeff, I think we're going to blow it.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah. That's a big one. But, I mean, you are juggling quite a few things here.
Just a few.
Just a few. Oh, my God. A theme of redemption, the relationship between a father and daughter, the idea of what does AI and the singularity even mean? What would that actually... not really necessarily the specifics of how you get there, but what does it mean after? What does that entail? And putting it on the same kind of pedestal and scale as cosmic gods, which I think it is an appropriate place for it. Like you don't see that kind of merging as often. I'm thinking to myself of actually the one other example is a Fire Upon the Deep where that actually is true. Cosmic and AI singularity being the same sort of point. Beyond that is just the ability of humans to mess everything up, but also the incredible ability of humans to adapt. And we mess a lot of stuff up, but we can also put the pieces back together in surprising ways.
that was probably the most shocking twist of the whole book, was that humanity made like a world government and seemed to like actually have something work out there. I was like, whoa, how'd they do that?
Ish.
Well, that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
With an asterisk.
wait,
Yeah.
That seems like a big question
Hey, guess
of
what? I think they're going to blow it.
I think they're going to blow it.
now
You
how
can see
much
the
of that
seeds.
is just, the American military might said everyone fall in line or nukes, and then everyone's like, yeah.
Well, I hope that book 2 starts to explore more, because that we saw a lot of that through the news articles. And we thought, so we were kind of getting that spread throughout of, no, it wasn't the focus of the book, but then there's this conference at the end. It's like, it was subtly introduced to show. Anyways, the point of that is chaos. Chaos is chaos being the theme of this book,
Also a character.
and a character.
Yes.
Literally chaos. And that's a big thing I got from it too. Just an apocalyptic event. You're going to blow it, Jeff. Do you think that there was another some takeaways that you got that you'll think back to this book about something about technology, something that because there was a lot of research put into this book that I appreciated.
Each character kind of had their own themes kind of dealing with Oliver clearly on redemption and the relationship between a father and daughter played out in 2 different instances. Failed with a daughter A, somewhat made up for it with pseudo daughter B. See how that goes, but then each one kind of dealing with some degree of a traumatic past, of something they need to get over. Each one of them has something. Oliver, clearly by the end of the absolute massacre he saw in India, and then also the family he saw right in front of his eyes, kind of spurring him on. Then you have Tony, of dealing with the murder of his grandmother, like right in front of him. And almost every single character has this kind of trauma that sometimes is caused by chaos, sometimes not, but does seem to be fuel for how they push themselves forward. In many ways, chaos starting these things, I'm wondering if the point of it is he may have tried to stir the pot, but him stirring the pot is actually going to lead to his downfall eventually. He thought he was ruining the humans, but actually you just made them stronger. That, like, on the foundation of trauma can actually come understanding and drive and vigor.
By book 5, you didn't blow it, Jeff. Is that the message of this? We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll have to find out.
How many times does
that we can't
humanity
comment.
blow it until we eventually kind of work it out? Like you blow it 5 times in a row, and then number 6 comes around, and like, man, by golly, you actually
6 times
got
a
it together.
charm. Whoever's left, get on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely.
It's interesting that you brought that up, 'cause one of my favorite themes in the book, or one of my favorite to kind of mess around with, is the weird like power balance in the world between religion and science. And when humanity is caught up in this cosmic potential threat that really when you think about it, there's no hope, there's nothing you can do. What does religion or science offer you to make you feel like you actually might have a purpose in this? So
Definitely see what you mean. Like, obviously, you have the Oliver Dos's and Lucia's point of view, and then you have Ashanti's, and 2 different major religions here about the Acolytes and Providence. And I thought it was so neat that, of course, in the 1990s, you have this crazy airlift technology that a cult would cultivate around this AI-esque figure of Claire. I thought that was so neat to go, yeah, that makes sense. This is so weird. It's apocalyptic times, and how this developed was so cool to see. And then you see Ashanti, her family, and having these light ones. That's a mysterious element that's built up to go, hey, they've talked about this before the apocalyptic event ever happened. Look, our religion accounts for this. And I was fascinated. How did you guys go about this with touching on the science versus religion and that thematic element Jacob is talking about?
That was carefully mapped.
Yeah.
Carefully.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole series. I mean, the series will have like a graph of the tension between religious groups, the rise and fall of those, the science groups, rise and fall of those, politics and world government and military,
as well as media.
Media. Yeah, those are all the
Right.
major ones that will have a lot of tension and kind of like rearrange themselves and have to reinvent themselves, and they'll be on top and then they'll crash again and then they'll be in conflict with each other. So that's a major thing that we track, and we're happy to hear that was working.
Yeah, and I think that we were talking last night. To us, that's kind of how cosmic horror works. Is you start to strip away anything that is understandable or bring comfort to you, bureaucracy or politics or science or media,
community,
or all these kind of things. Is like, I know that, I understand that. That gives me a sense of comfort, like us watching Survivor every night. I get that. I know that
had no
show.
point. That wasn't going to save us from coronavirus, but
we ate Oreos and we did that.
But it gave us order. It was like, we're going to do this every night at 7, and we're going to eat a bag of Oreos, and we're going to make fun of people, and this is going to happen every fucking day.
Every night.
Excuse me. Oh my gosh, am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
I think the people that read the book know you all curse plenty. Yeah.
So
that is a vulgar household.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. As you look behind that veil and kind of things are like, you see the real wheels turning in the universe and what's happening, and these things one by one get stripped away. That's where some of the uncomfortable horror, spooky stuff comes from.
Yeah, but I think like when you think about what people's reaction to that would be, if you introduce something that makes absolutely no sense to somebody, they're going to try and come up with an explanation that might not be true. But whether there's somebody that's a figurehead in media or some kind of fringe cult, or they can apply it to that, and then suddenly they have a sense of power.
Yeah, it's like Dennis breaking into the lab and seeing something he doesn't understand, and voila, cult.
Yeah.
And
we all have a long history of that. Like, what's that? That's Apollo, dragging his chariot
the
across.
sun,
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've always done.
Yeah.
Is it between science and religion, especially in this book, there's two questions that everyone kind of wants an answer. People want answers and people want purpose. Mm-hmm. And depending on the application, religion and science, like science would be tend to have maybe a quote unquote better answer for certain things, but ultimately does not provide you as much purpose versus. So here's the flip. And I know this isn't like completely true. I'm talking generalities here, but science can explain why the earth goes around the sun. We have an answer, but what is our purpose here on earth and what do we do for each other? Science doesn't really have an answer for that, where religion deals a lot more with your purpose. The fun thing with this book is that kind of flips for this entire book, where religion, Providence Group, actually has the answer. Supposedly, they were right. Aliens are real. What the hell's true? They were actually right all along. Religion has the answer. And now with chaos going around, what is people's purpose? And through this book, it's science. Like, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to, like, I don't know what to do with my life. And now humanity has come together to create this observatory. We have the Our Life program trying to solve the answer of humanity's questions of, you kind of get what I mean?
Absolutely. It's
Yeah,
really great observation. It's great observation.
That's an amazing
cool thing
observation.
that we liked about that specifically is that science can claim to have all the answers, but when you introduce cosmic horror, you can't answer there's no way. But religion is fast and can, and science is typically slow. Like, you have the development of this new experiment of what Howard may want to do with the R-lifts, and maybe there's some kind of scientific exploration there to provide us with some answers for these cosmic threats and all that. But who knows how long that's going to take? Somebody from a cult can just explain it to you right away, and you can go, I'll buy that because it tells me how to feel. I feel much better. I'm great.
That's one of your
science can only offer
best
you so
takeaways,
much.
best takes and themes I've heard from you. That was really good.
Oh, thank you.
That was
It was good.
I thought that was it's a good way to look at, and Jacob, you're describing this like quick answer versus long answer of the cult saying, hey, look, we have it all mapped out, but then the scientists are going there and trying to make sense of things.
But the fun part is the Providence group throughout the whole book seems to actually have an answer of all these different accounts they're retelling. Their prophets seem to actually be real. They're recounting real alien things that we're reading from. They're completely right.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not right in the application of what that means for humanity, but I don't know. They seem to got it going on.
Super cool observation. Yeah, the whole balance that you all made, and as you're discussing here, there's religion, science, politics, media, etc. If you had to put a label on it, and Rich, tell me if you'd agree, like the quote unquote bad guy here is Howard Winfried, and like he seems to be somewhat like, by the end you see, okay, I see why people fear him and what's going on. Oh, okay, Chaos is also the bad guy, of course. But as far as our human cast goes, that was so seeing Howard Winfried and it's interesting to play out, because I think in the real world, or just going back to the 90s, like you don't think like I don't think of like one person in mind that would go, oh, that this was what would happen today or back in the 90s, as far as it was just fun to see how the elements of the push and pull you guys are talking about, of what takes precedent right now. This world government, this media corporation, this religion then starts to prop up, or your religions that people are familiar with, like Catholicism, Christianity. How did they react in this book? And I guess, how did you all go about that, talking about the things that people are familiar with that aren't like, hey, acolytes are made up, the providence is made up, but you have Christian elements that's not. How did you handle tackling those subjects when you came about writing the book?
The Catholics I knew really well because I worked with nuns for about 11 years. So I had a pretty good handle on what they'd say. And so the Vatican no comment scene was one of our favorites, because we thought that was just, I don't know, we thought that was pretty funny, but but as far as like looking at some of the other religions, and we really go into Catholicism and a bit into Protestantism in this book, and the next books we'll take a look at other religions and their responses. Is that I was really lucky to talk to a few people who could set me straight on how Muslims would respond to a potential alien, and their text says they would just be fine with it. Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to getting into that culture next, and how long like how do they evolve to include that in their religious texts, and why did Christianity in general evolve to not include it? So that really interested me in the writing of this, like when we actually have religions who kind of, like Providence, they stepped in, but like at the conference, you see that the Muslims are kind of off in the corner, and they've released out of their breakout panel, and they're just like, yeah, this is good, we've got this. And I touch on the Jewish part a little bit, and there's a lot about like Howard that's unaddressed right now, about his past and his Judaism, and how that might play into the future. But I think you're really right that Howard is the main human instigator.
So. Yeah. And also it's
he's
like
the one that doesn't blow it.
Yeah, he doesn't blow it. And like when you're skipping around the world and look, you do see not only Providence kind of ascending, because hey, this fringe, and it's a flip again, like this always thought of this little fringe religion seemed to have had it right. And then as you're jumping around like Mexico City and Ghana and other places in the world, you're seeing people like kind of revert back to some of their older myths and legends and ideals of faith.
Aztec sacrifices, and in Lucia's section, or in Doss's, I can't remember. Yeah, I think it is Lucia's. But they talked about they talked about like what other cultures are doing by reverting back to their primitive religions, and how that's addressing some kind of need. And I'm like, Jacob and I are really looking forward to getting into that, and some of the religion that the Arlifts are adopting. Yeah, that's that paganism is so
they
cool.
totally have the answers for you, because when you go back and you get the backstory of Eilish Finnegan, it's not what Providence had of what happened with Eilish Finnegan. History is still a sketchbook. No matter what you say is gospel, it's a game of telephone. You can't totally perfectly embody what happened 100 years ago.
I'm curious too, that scene. So when you're the no comment from the Pope scene, did I interpret it correctly where Ashanti's father, he reacted and said like, money? Was he saying that like they were paid off to say that by somebody, or was he referring to he's going to make more money because of the fact that the church said that?
Yeah.
Yep.
People will be looking for answers and they don't have it.
Got it.
This
Okay,
is our,
yeah,
this,
that's probably my one pushback. I'd
this is
say.
our moment.
The one push, because I think I thought, okay, if that was the case, because then I was weirded up like why they would put the whole media show together and like get this whole display just to say nothing. Like, yeah, I get the humor portion of it, but I was like, I guess just from like my more Christian friends that I know, or like they would probably, like, I was reading into what the popes have said about like alien life and so forth, and it seems like Pope by the way, I'm not Christian, so I'm coming from like just referring to what I generally, I guess, know from Christian friends. But like the whole, how would a religion tackle like the discovery of an alien? What did you feel, Rich? Because I feel like some people would be like, maybe they would respond differently, or if it's just for the humor portion, that's also different. So
yeah, I saw it more as like, yeah, it's the humorous portion. Like I get it's the joke, but in terms of world building, and that is one of the things that kind of took me out of it, of like, because so much of it was very believable to me, like, oh, that makes so complete sense. That one took me out and said, like, that one doesn't make sense. It's hard for me to ever imagine the Catholic Church ever doing that, of just
when you did
the
your
whole
research,
media scene, and then just
yeah.
no comment. I'm going, oh.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious from your research why you came to that conclusion, or are we overthinking it and like it was more of, so you guys wanted to put an element in there that was
more fun.
I
I think that's a fun moment for us.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a
I've
lot of research there, and it's
just
like
been to a lot of press conferences at the Chancery.
Yeah.
And
Oh, okay. Yeah.
it's possible. It's just possible that I
I
was having too much fun with myself.
I think maybe there's that could be there's like a little gap here between some of our performing background and what ended up on the page there. I think because for me, in the performance of that, you have the card to come out. He's got the papers. He's ready to make this statement. And then it's this individual that sat down in front of this press conference to make this statement that has a crisis of faith and just can't go through with it. So it's in that performance and in that moment that one person that was tasked to go sit in front of the media fails.
That's interesting.
That's how I would play it.
Okay.
And that's how I played it in the room when we were talking about it. And that was always in my mind. But I don't know if that entirely got to the page. That's where you guys.
I can definitely see, in this being kind of in your head, like if I'm projecting this scene we don't see in the book of the cardinal actually having a discussion with the different bishops of like, hey, here's what our response should be. He has it prepared. They have a prepared statement. They go up. He goes up to the podium. He's looking out the words, and that crisis of faith and understanding, and then he just botches it all by saying no comment.
Yeah.
But not necessarily that's what the Pope would actually tell him to say.
We did say like His Holiness
Exactly.
has one comment on this.
Yeah, that's the point.
Right.
Yeah, it
So-
says something. This will be the only.
The
this
only
will be
thing,
the
yeah.
only comment about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This is good. We are recording this when I'm still editing. So I might.
So this problem might not
adjust
exist
this a bit.
by the time.
Because my comment on that was just more so, I would think in the real world, like somebody that does have a faith that's deeply held, and they would just think of this, because I'm coming from someone who respects the hell out of religion, but I am agnostic. So I really am like I'm sitting on that fence and it's hurting my crotch. Like, it's when I'm thinking about this, I'm going, a religious person who has these deep values. In the past, when scientific discoveries happen, evolution happens. People don't just abandon religion. People don't just abandon everything that they've thought they believe that it shifts to work with their text. And I'm not saying like a God of the Gaps type thing, but it seems to me that somebody would, their deeply held belief, they would make sure like, no, there is this, like Pope Francis, for example, came out, and I was looking into this, said, or even in the 90s, it was Pope John Paul II, I believe, it came out that there was like some comment he made about, hey, aliens are also worthy of saving too, or him or Francis said, like, as science fiction became a thing, there were still open air discussions about, hey, I don't know. I'm speaking like I'm a theologian. I'm not. But just the natural human response would be, hey, my religion still has, like, this does not deny my God type of thing. I feel like people would crux down and go, no. That's just my natural thought of that. But yeah, just tossing all that your way for a bunch of word salad.
And that is a relationship with people that we kind of wanted to explore in further books or, novellas that we haven't totally planned out yet. But that exact relationship of what happens when you've been following this text your entire life and you've found out that at best a very large portion of it could be untrue or, flawed in some type of way. Like, I think there would be all different types of groups that stick with it and say, no, this is true, and just, live in denial of the videos that were public.
Or they adapt.
They adapt.
Yeah.
Or they take on a whole different type of religion, or they call themselves something different entirely.
Things change over time.
That's
just like you were saying, history
is
changes over time. Belief systems do as well.
Exactly.
Leaving the book, it's more of like, the question is, why did like the Pope, the Catholics, like the official Catholic Church, they just threw in the towel? The Muslims like are handling this better. It's like, oh, why? What about like the Catholics? Just like Catholic is a very old religion, arguably one of the oldest religions in the world, and they just threw in the towel. Like, no, and we're done. Wrap up shop, guys. We're done.
Yeah, it was just curious because to look at because when you guys were talking about Providence and the acolytes and the majority of the book being on those religions, like that's what I was curious about too, just to see how the elements of like things in the real world that you could that was it. I was very curious about how you went into that, because that was an immersion moment where I was going, oh dang, why'd that happen? But then it also makes sense, like the Muslim response made sense of like, oh, they'd make it work and adapt with their religion as well. So I was looking at why is there the difference between those two, and then I actually thought the humorous portion of that was, hey, whatever, the Protestants are just waiting for the Catholics to respond, then the Protestants will respond.
Okay,
there was a lot of funny shit in there. Did
I write that line down?
I think I did. Yeah,
I think I sent it to you guys. I'm trying to remember the actual line, but it was hilarious.
Yeah. Like it was clearly you guys were poking, and it was a fun poke and fun. Like that's why there's absurd elements, humor. So I was more curious to go. Sometimes it was hard to interpret. Was this meant for a laugh? Was this meant for a world building? Was this meant for like a thought provoking section of this? And that one I was unsure. But yeah, you have the quote, Rich.
I'm trying to find
I think that's what it was. The Protestants are waiting for the Catholics to respond.
Oh, was it something like the Methodists are here for the
potlucks?
For the potluck
That's
dinner?
right.
For the potlucks, yeah.
That they're no better than Methodists. I think that was your favorite line. We are no better than Methodists.
Yeah. I grew up Methodist. I know exactly what.
I think it was meant for a laugh, but I mean, as far as world building goes, I do think part of us thought, like Richard said, Catholicism, very old and maybe not quite as slow as science, but they can be slow with change.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Maybe they didn't come out right away and say, here's how we're going to adapt, and the no comment to us kind of felt like a hold, please. We'll figure it out.
Well,
if you will, a Galileo moment.
Yeah.
A Galileo moment. Got it. God, I see what you're going for. So like remind me, that's not discovering.
Well, that's
saying the sun.
Well, that's the
that was Copernicus. What am I saying?
Well, okay, Galileo didn't actually discover that the Earth actually revolves around the sun, not the other way around. I believe it is Copernicus, but like Galileo made it popular, and he was the one that was censured by the church, and
excommunicated, I believe, and it wasn't their finest moment. And they've had a lot of moments that aren't very fine, as a lot of institutional religions do. And I think it's fair. And I think I might, kind of tweak that section just a tad.
Ooh, you guys are going to cause tweaking.
But I think it's fair. I think it's a very fair remark, and since it's not out at the time of this, it's good for clarity to say.
We're still tweaking.
To say to go into line of the of the I think I'm going to blow it, Jeff moment that this man, this spokesman, and that kind of it ties in with the media. Howard making this one decision that affects all of humanity, that this one Catholic with a microphone just loses it. We got nothing.
Moment. That's kind of more the theme, I think, for us sometimes, because at the basis of all these great ideas and things that humans have built, at the base of it is us, and we're so flawed.
Yeah,
and that's where we blow it.
Yeah, no, I totally see that point of an individual could definitely lose it and have a crisis of faith. Totally.
Yeah.
So it seemed like the institution had a crisis of faith. Where
that's right.
I think if you got it across of the individual did, 100% believable. It was something more so about that of the statement, and the whole church got behind and was like, our church,
the Pope has one thing to say, and
essentially he's even the Pope is going, maybe Jesus wasn't our I don't think that would ever happen. That's how it was coming across.
Some tap dancing. There would be some tap dancing for sure. Yeah.
So
everybody calm down, and we're going to go into some breakout sessions and have some cookies, and I feel that's what would happen.
There could be a Ramble tweak.
It's a Ramble tweak.
People that are reading this, you just saw things happen.
Well, I do want to preface, this is your guys' story. Our criticism is not justification
really
to change your book.
No, it's a really good one.
I think that's really fair and really interesting that maybe my personal experience there played too heavy a part. I've attended too many press conferences.
Or that we just thought it was too funny.
At the archdiocese.
A lot of this was us cracking each other up. That could have been a lot of it too.
Yeah,
that's a big thing too, because now for I know a friend of mine who I would love to recommend this book, and I know he would get a percent offend. He probably would. He'd probably love the book, hate that section, and go, I hate the book now, because I think he would interpret it in the wrong way you guys are going for, whatever it is, just because he'd feel we gave it high praise. I know some people who would read into that and go, oh, that's not what I would do, or that's not what
not that the crisis of faith, but it's the absence of the Muslims came out all right, the Jews are still going fine. It's only the Catholics that just the entire institution just wrapped it up and called it a day.
Yeah.
And it's why are they the only ones that completely failed?
And see, this is coming for your daily ramble agnostics. We don't know shit. So.
That's an important thing to point out. Yeah. We're both not Catholics or Christians. Yeah,
well, I was raised Roman Catholic, so I do I understand a lot the culture of Anyways, that's a long ramble just to say, hey, you know what?
We've been praising your book too much. We wanted to give
that's really cool.
a modicum of criticism.
Yeah, you damn pagans. Cool. No.
That's really cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we've thought-provoking section was really the focus of the book. That's the takeaway still is about the chaos and about the how humanity reacts, and that's why I guess that was a topical point, because it's how to each religion and science and that was really these elements of how the acolytes and prudence would come to fruition make so much sense, and how science would expedite as well. You see some technology that no way that would be invented in the 90s, but especially with a crisis and something that massive, of course that would. And especially when you got Alien Lucia.
Well, that's the best way to actually why did science rapidly develop in the story? Because it's a story we don't want to spend too long, because AI in the 90s doesn't make as much sense with our history, but you look at the history of computers. The rapid development of computers being born from the crisis of the Cold War, that's the real development. So
Right.
you see what we were able to do to go to the moon and how quickly we were able to, push science to the limits.
When the political will is there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that is the fun aspect of it. Of now you start thinking, oh, now that we're past this, past the 90s, how would this world look differently than ours? We're now diverting where the world was exactly like ours, and now it's going to become a completely parallel world to what we know.
I think
fun.
there's even a section in one of the DOS entries where I think he's writing to Dr. Amati. He's like, this internet thing needs to catch on, man. We got to share files quicker than this. This is a problem.
The fact that AI itself is developing quicker than internet.
Yeah.
And that's just because of the need. It's how it is broken down. And the fact, it may also, the fact that Lucia is so brilliant.
Right.
She doesn't need as many collaborators, meaning she doesn't particularly have the same need as others for the internet, for collaborative development, because she's doing the heavy lifting on her own through somewhat cosmic intervention.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
All of this stuff made sense to me, and that's why I really love the world building. That's
That was
why
really
it floored me.
fun. Yeah, that was really fun to look at where computers were and where artificial life was in the 1990s. And that conference that Doss went to where he met Sarah was real. Where there were, there was an artificial life conference at Los Alamos and at that time. And I wanted Doss to attend it. And for all of that, being born of the era of the atomic bomb and building that brain that made that bomb go off, and all of it being born from destruction really interested me, and why they made that conference at Los Alamos. And, I was like, wow, these guys, who went on to really, pioneer a lot of artificial life, not only artificial intelligence, artificial life for our world. It started where in the seed of destruction. Yeah. And I thought that was so sinister that actually happened. And I really wanted that to be in the foundation of what Doss was looking at. And that's where I wanted him to meet Sorrow, and for them to collectively be kind of like goosed into the idea of what artificial life can bring.
The clock is ticking.
The clock is ticking, and the next evolutionary step, and we need to move it, because the game is up. We're out of time.
That's a question I actually have for you all on the big hiccup, the big challenge that AI has in this novel that is solved with the sort of cosmic, but there is a little bit of divine intervention with Claire in some way. But the idea that they have all these advanced systems, that these our lives are able to actually move around, to some degree think, but it's the conversion of short-term to long-term memory, and that their memories reset every night after it. Why was that the hiccup? Why was that the challenge? What are you trying to say about
Jacob?
Well, that is actually a real issue that AI has, at least like artificial life has.
Catastrophic forgetting is a thing.
Yeah, catastrophic forgetting is what it's called, which you can Google, is apparently a real thing. And I'm sure there's aspects of it that we didn't get totally right. But as a human, part of the reason that we're able to compartmentalize things that we've learned is because we dream. At night when you sleep, your brain tends to almost like think of it like compressing files. You're taking things that you interacted with throughout the day and then kind of neatly tucking them together in little boxes. And through that way, you have memories that you can access and lessons, and that's how you learn a lot of the time. But artificial life can't do that. So in a lot of ways, at a lot of times, artificial life will just start their program or whatever and suddenly forget how to do a really basic task because they don't have the ability to compartmentalize information and continuously grow in a more effective way. All of the information is static in one place. So that was something that we needed a reason for Claire to be different. And we wanted her to be kind of this like helping hand character in this simulation. So we kind of stumbled upon that issue that artificial intelligence actually has and thought, well, what if Claire could dream? And in that way, Claire dreamed for everybody. And she was almost this keeper of lessons and was able to assist in all these other artificial life forms in their own ability to compartmentalize information.
So there was that bit of that divine intervention, and it also just, you don't want to give too much coming on, but it's anyone that knows Lovecraft knows dreaming and the dreamlands factor in very large into the mythos. So just to start to get a little bit of this in there makes a big difference.
Well, right. To really kind of talk about the evolutionary capacity of dreaming and what it's for. And like it's still kind of up in the air about, what dreams are really for and what their purpose are. And that's kind of what scientists are landing on right now. And it's so interesting that artificial life also have, they have that problem as well. And then, there's this intersection of Lovecraft and dreaming, and the famous quote was Cthulhu, lies dreaming in the city R'lyeh. And I just blew that quote, but all of this intersection of what dreams are and how it affects humanity and all of that was really interesting to us. And so like where that intersection of Cthulhu and artificial life and humans and evolutionary capacity, where that meets will be dreams. So
and it does go somewhere. Yeah.
Well, you definitely say, I find the interesting thing to think about of what makes us human and how I think even Sorrow and the others kind of mention of seeing Sorrow and the other cosmic beings of kind of unchanging. They exist. And the fact that humans within a relatively short amount, to them it's incredibly short, and they also don't think too much of us, but humans within a very short amount of time have drastically changed and lived full, complete lives and through different cultures and evolved in different ways. And that's all because of Cthulhu basically connecting us through dreams. And that's kind of the cosmic, mythological reason for our evolution.
So, wow.
Wow. Isn't that cool?
And it's also the reason why we felt like the plot and the book structure really needed to be the way it was, where you have these seemingly disparate characters and ideas all over the globe that you can show are connected. It's like we had to start, like right away for the series to work. We had to start making points about that in every way possible, even if it's meta with the structure. And we just had to start hammering that home as quickly as possible. So all of those little puzzle box, little mysteries of this, and this, and you're here in Brazil and Tony finds a letter from Oliver Doss who was in the previous section. I mean, that's just a cheat to say we're all connected.
Yeah.
This is this is what we're missing and we just, as humans, we love to think we're exceptional in the universe and we love to think we're not connected, but we're all made of space dust and we're all a part of everything. Yeah. And it's just more fun for me anyway to think that what if it really is connected? Like really connected.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
not
fun.
only that we're all connected, but it's a system that's being abused. I can't remember if it's in the Manny chapter or when Sorrow is talking to Mary that we bring up the Cthulhu in his house at R'lyeh is kind of like a siren song, like the evolution to get to humanity to be able to dream so that Cthulhu can talk to them and eventually get them to discover the temple has been this plan all along. And the want to have this ecosystem where humanity is connected and then discover it's being used behind our backs and there are these people way bigger than us that are, nudging us towards things that we have no idea about.
So that, I mean, that's, I guess, what a thought-provoking. Another theme is like free will and
Well, how many times in history of, the actual nature of a like mob mentality is a real thing of all it takes is for a couple instigators in a large crowd to actually change the will, direction, mentality of an entire group of.
Yeah.
So there already is.
That's why
a
we have
sense
so
of-
many genocides in the book. Like we have just these examples of people just saying, it's like, you know what we should do is what that guy says, and like how badly that goes.
Yeah.
And so, like we really wanted to, highlight that, Richard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how influential humans really are. It's to not actually. I know, don't want to get too serious about it, but it's something to think about. With this book talks about generally is how really thin the veil of civilization is. It doesn't take
absolutely.
much to remove it. We all like to think of ourselves as better than awful people from the past. And a real humbling moment is realizing, if I was born in that time, I would probably be just like those awful people. Like I am no different than them. I am just as capable of being influenced. If you were in Nazi Germany, you would probably be a Nazi, just as you like. That's kind of how it is. And Waldemar, like he does kind of make that point of like, that's the time I was in. I didn't see all the horrible things, but like this is the culture I grew up in and things I learned.
Statistically speaking, if you were living in Germany at that time, you were a Nazi and you were going along with it. I mean, that's just not everybody was saving people. It's just
And
like,
who
well,
knows, maybe
important to
100
think
years from now, people are going to go, man, that Richard guy.
Yeah.
He let us all off a cliff.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to look back and regret they weren't a Rambler or a talking storyer. They're going to go, wow, they were.
That's what it is.
They were not them.
But it's one thing the horrifying thing is we are not that different from the people that do horrible things, but it's also a humbling moment of like, they are also could be like us, and it doesn't it takes good influence to change people. And so you can see it both ways, but it is a humanizing moment of these people are just like us. They're not monsters. They're not vastly different than us. We're all the same.
Always. And like this is just a hobby of mine. It's just genocide prevention. Like that's hobby. But that's
a hobby. Just on the side.
Do something in your free time. When you got
I got a Saturday off.
So
I
I'm
think
just
I'm going to
gonna
look at this genocide and see how I can.
But that's that's really a lot of the first steps. So, and it makes me happy when people say, when the reaction to the book is like, you made me care about a Nazi.
Yeah.
And it's not that I want people to turn into white supremacists. It's that I want people to understand what part of yourself you can have empathy with this human, therefore understand, maybe by the transitive property, maybe it marinates, I'm capable. So you need to put that brake in your head when you start hearing some stuff come at you and say, I am capable and I have to have control. But that's part of it, is to say, like when we see, oh, that's really happening in Rwanda and that's really awful, but that's them, or that's happening in Bosnia and that's them, or Sudan or Europe, or, it's just anywhere. That's them and it's not me. That's dangerous because it is you. We're very capable. And
basically, we could all blow it, Jeff.
We can all blow it.
It really does cover the theme. Yeah. I love that, your perspective on that too. I think, again, a beautiful thing you did about this book is, again, a Nazi, and then you have Ashanti, and then you have Lucia. Like, these are all very, very, very different people. And you get to see very different cultures, mindsets, and it humanizes people, but also dehumanizes, like in the way of, like, you see there's villains. Villains exist as well, but you do a good job of showing how humanity would react, and how we are not so different. We could also fall into these trappings.
You can empathize with a character or person without actually agreeing. That's an important. Honestly, it's an important
Essential.
life skill.
Yeah. Yes.
Not a lot of people at least enough people I've met cannot wrap their head around of just
Yeah.
you
And
can
that's what the
disagree with
amazing
someone
thing
and
about
also
reading does. I think reading
empathize.
builds that skill.
Right. And there were a lot of people, in my research for this and for the book that I was working on before this, that I came across that, and it's not something we know a lot about in our era or in this country, is that there were a lot of people who knew what was going on over there. And I'm talking about, in World War II, didn't have a hand in it,
Yeah.
couldn't stop it without losing their lives or losing the lives of the ones they loved, or starving to death or being ostracized, and how difficult it was for people to resist and rebel, and what that meant by going against the grain of society. Like, you would have to, think about how uncomfortable Thanksgiving is right now with all of your relatives in the same room, and everybody is so polarized at the moment, politically speaking. Think about that times 1,000 if you were not the Nazi in the room in a Berlin dinner in 1941. You were going against a very big grain, and you would be ostracized from your family, your community, your job, everything about you would have to be secretive, possibly your spouse, possibly your children. You would be shamed if you were wrong. Like, what if we didn't lose the war? Then, for the rest of your life, you'd be shamed. These are very big decisions, and not a lot of people were able to make them.
Yeah.
And so that ends my lecture about that.
Yeah,
but that's not why I wrote Voldemort. I wanted to make a point that he's a part of humanity, and he's a part of us. It's a very unsavory part of us. Complicated.
Sorry, the reason I use the examples too of like Voldemort versus Ashanti, like Ashanti, someone who looks at look at her view and it completely makes sense of what happened
the
to
American
her family.
slavers and just terrible America takes away my family.
But it makes perfect sense because it makes perfect sense, and showing how her perspective on versus a Nazi who's a white supremacist versus somebody who's looked at the white slavers. Like, these are two characters that coexist in the book, and both deeply understandable. And so when I'm reading these characters, I'm looking at them and understand I wasn't thinking that an author wrote this. They just came across as genuine people, and that is, I guess, a good time to transition in the character section before we go any further. But before I do that, this is off camera now. I just want to say that whole thought-provoking, like, since we're talking about the themes and we just got really deep in there, I know you guys said, are you actually going to change something in the book? Like,
should I not?
I don't want you guys to feel pressured to do so. I just want to keep this off camera.
No, I think you guys possibly just made it better. That's what we. That's
okay.
We're totally open to that.
I understand like how many people have given us ideas and options.
To be clear, what we're hearing is like there's a section of the book that kind of took you guys out of it, and there's a way to make it better so it doesn't do that, but still conveys what we wanted to do in the first place. Yeah, like that.
Okay.
Win-win. Consider that's probably going to get
I'm just making
done.
sure, like, on camera, don't want it, like, this is all off. Like, Nick, just going to edit this out, please, Nick.
No, I totally understood what you meant. But we've gotten so much feedback like that that's made the book so much better.
Yeah.
I don't want you to feel that way at all.
No, that's just like from our theater pass, that's just a director giving us a great note. That's a great note.
That's a great note.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, that's a couple of sentence fix. And that's me scanning Lucia to make sure the collapse of Mexico City is so entwined with Catholicism. If one falls, the other's going to fall. So, that's a couple of sentence fix, man, to make people not put the book down. That's it's an amazing note.
Okay, just checking that off because I didn't want on camera talking to you guys, giving the feedback and then feeling compelled to change it from that. And that whole section we can just making sure, clarifying, because it is not our book at all.
We want to be careful with that. We don't want to actually be the ones dictating
especially
someone
since
else's work
it's
like
not
that.
published yet.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, sure, and that happened with what combative robo guy. What's his name?
Yeah.
Alex.
Al.
Yeah, he said something, and I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he clarified, and I was like, "Oh, too bad." That
Yeah, no, there's not every note that we go, oh, that's a good note. That actually is a good note.
that actually is a good.
Yeah.
Note.
okay,
Yeah.
just making sure. Yeah, are you guys
Yeah.
cool continuing and getting back into characters?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because also, since it's going to be different, if it will change by the time the book comes out, like that whole section is going to be about something that's not there. So is that still okay? Like how?
It's
But
fine-
it's an
it's
interesting
fine with me.
discussion, I guess.
Yeah.
It's fine with me because like a lot of that just shows like how these things get made.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sweet.
and we're not removing the section. The section will still
Yeah.
be there, just be a little different.
Different. Okay.
It's just going to
perfect.
play a little bit differently, just the one individual, the kind of way I always saw it, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just saying we're going to add some things. It's not going to change much. It's just
Okay.
we're just going to add that male character sitting there with a very big statement, some sweat on the face, maybe some tension in the living room, and then no comment, and then like maybe some other bishops in the room going, huh?
Wait, what?
Oh, that would be
And-
lovely.
and-
oh my
and
god,
then
this is a
and then
6-star
chaos.
book. That was the one reason I was giving it a 4.75.
Okay, can we make a deal?
Yeah.
Like when you see shit like that in our books, will you call us?
Yeah, you got to tell us.
That's what this is for.
Well, like not here, like on the phone and go. They wouldn't fucking say no comment,
Yeah.
bitch. Don't do this.
Dude, we are not those artists that go, how dare
How
you?
dare you? No,
No,
this
that's
is
not how this works at all for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is your story too. Like
Yeah.
if you love it and this is your story and that's something that didn't work.
Our thing is like art doesn't exist until the audience comes in. And
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
the best feedback is from like the audience that have looked at it. We take that extremely serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is just
Sweet.
you guys got probably bumped up in the
Oh my gosh.
acknowledgments. You just made it better.
Yeah, and like recently, what was it, like 2 days ago? Like somebody said you
Yeah.
spelled Lucia wrong.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh my goodness.
2 days ago, guys.
We had to go in there and change every one, or she did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay, yeah, just clarifying and making sure because we didn't want to be like the on-camera pressure. Of,
Yeah,
of
just
any of
no.
that.
The
Yeah,
pressure
no.
of us
Yeah.
wanted. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet.
Sorry, Nick.
Yeah,
Sorry, Nick.
Sorry, Nick.
Well, no,
Hey,
wait.
Nick.
Double question now.
What's
That
up?
whole section. Do you guys want to keep that out or in? Like just to
I'll keep it in.
you want to keep that in?
I mean, it's up to you guys.
No, it's your show. You do what
Yeah,
you want, but I don't mind.
This is
I
too
think
long.
it's an
and you guys-
interesting discussion.
That isn't. Geez, I was trying to ask you guys like genuinely, but we could also keep that in the show. Like, hey, this is like this. The book didn't come out. This is how the review process works, and want to keep it in?
You can
Yeah.
even put some up there that's like, due to this discussion, changes were made. Like, you know.
It was like you were seeing the process in action.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't mind. I don't mind at all. I want
Sweet.
people to know how hard this is and how much you have to like listen to other people.
Yes.
And put
be
your
open.
put your ego aside and say, well, maybe I did kind of like to make a wrong step, and I never really thought about it that deeply. And now that I'm thinking about it deeply, no, he's right. It doesn't work. I mean,
Yeah.
like you have to be big and do that.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Let's keep
It's
it in
not-
then because
it's not
that's a
easy.
cool like behind the scenes moment for people to see. But yeah, awesome. Let's keep going
It's
then
your
because
show.
that's
Do what you want.
awesome. All right, you want to go on to characters? What'd you give it out of 5 stars?
I gave the characters a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Really great.
You hate the book.
Yeah, apparently.
I gave it higher. I gave it a 4.5. Spectacular.
Here
I'm a
comes
bigger
another
fan.
note.
Here comes more notes.
Yeah.
We talked so much about let's not even touch on Voldemort. We talked about him a ton. Let's go. Main character, I guess you could say, is
Okay.
Oliver.
Oliver Doss.
Okay, we'll just say
Oliver Doss is,
talk Oliver.
for some reason, he's two things. He's not the most important. He's not the most important character out of any of them. Has the less he's not important as the others, but he's also the through line. And for the plot itself, he is the most integral. And personally, for me, I think he has the best character arc throughout the story that I was most invested. I don't think I mentioned it in the emotional impact section, but his scene closer to the end with Nessa and Lucia and him confronting Winfield that was the most emotional I was for a character scene of him actually giving up his dream, his entire life's work for Lucia. That moved me. And so I loved that scene, especially on top of just a great monologue, like following the great monologue by Winfield right into Oliver solving the problem and sacrificing a bit of himself for it. Loved it.
That was very sweet.
Especially with the great setup of how much he's sucked at being a father and a husband.
Yeah. I think that, to me, I love hearing that, because that was the last puzzle piece to slide in. That main thread in the middle of Oliver and Lucia, and that everything kind of intertwines and hangs off of. That was the last part we kind of really got right. And his arc is the most complete, so everything can hang off of it. Right. And everybody else is kind of in that epic fantasy way, like, here's the inciting incident, there's a big dark one, and now here's from all over the world some chosen people that may come together and form some type of fellowship to address this. But his is more of a complete arc through the center of this that all those threads wrap around.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I totally see that, because you literally get at the sci-fi moment with Tony of he reads Dune and he looks to these other heroes, and so he's having his own inciting incident himself. And now, because this is going to be 5 books long, I imagine these characters, we will soak with them, marinate, and see their arcs will be paid off later.
Well,
and
there's also something of the characters. The later the characters are given their POV, the bigger advantage they all have as a So that's why I think Tony was the hardest one for me to connect to right out of the gate, because we have the least amount of puzzle pieces going into it. We got some, but by the time we're in Lucia's POV, we've been introduced to her. I'm already invested in her as a character. We have enough little puzzle pieces. I'm already know a little bit more about the Providence group, the aliens. Like, I know more about Sister Mary. All of these things are. I'm going into their POV a bit more invested and a bit more intrigued. Where Tony is like just hard drop of there's some. So that's why Tony didn't work as well for me in like. Of the characters, if I had to rank it, Tony was the least interesting for me. But as each POV, I just kept getting more and more invested because of how Oliver Doss is giving us the through line and connecting everything together.
Yeah, I hope this came across in the spoiler-free section for people, but the way I look at this book, there's deep and interesting characters, but as pitching this to people, I would so focus on the plot elements specifically, because even though Tony, he's going to develop later on, I was so engrossed just because, again, the mysteries, going back to everything we said in the emotional aspect of it. But when we're looking at characters of these irreplaceable characters, they have personalities that come off the page. Each and every character here just felt real and realized. And Tony, you've read some Tonys, like they're starting their journeys. He's a 16-year-old kid, is he? Or he's in those younger years. The interesting part about each of them is their specific backgrounds and how they'll, again, solving mysteries, lead to the greater puzzle in the future books. Because you see how, how would you describe Tony's personality, I guess?
I'd say that's the harder one. Overall, he's timid, shy, and thing is that his personality, or is that mostly the drugs? This thing is, I don't know if you get a complete picture of him in his POV because of the narcotics going through his system. By the end of the POV, he's mostly off of it. He's coming a little bit more out of his shell, but he's dealing with just how alienated he is from everyone, kind of alone, even in a house with Voldemort and, of course, but
Sorrow.
Sorrow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think a lot of the reason that Tony actually comes out of his shell is that Voldemort is pushing him to do it.
Yeah, Voldemort has a lot to do with
that. There's a combination between the narcotics and this Nazi telling him to man up and take his own direction.
And the thing about Tony, too, is each of these other point of views, or at least you see with Oliver, you have Lucia, who's that dynamic personality. Ashanti has her own dynamic personality. It's like Tony doesn't shine in his narrative as much as like the characters around, but even with Oliver, you're attached to Oliver, and Lucia shines as just this active character, if that's the right word to put, because Tony right now he's a young kid. Things and only getting an inciting incident for Tony, like you were describing, John, of he doesn't have a character arc like Oliver does. So I guess as far as that goes, it's not you didn't dislike Tony. It's just you were more invested in others, as a way to put it. I don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it.
Because if you did, then we'd have to tell them to rewrite a lot of other things, and you wouldn't.
Still time, man. Still time. Let's go.
No.
For me, it's like Tony. You get a great introduction, and you see, there's like some seeds dropped there that are going to pay off.
Don't talk about them.
You get a jerk
spoil.
No spoilers for things I care about. Yeah.
Talk about what we actually put out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, something that you almost didn't put out there was the nun character. You said she was not an original character in the book. Is that correct?
The nun showed up at the end of Tony when I was writing Tony, and Tony was mostly
that was hers.
Tony was mostly me.
That was actually the second time that the nun popped up.
No, sweetie, no. It was the first time.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
We're
going to argue.
Finish.
When we were writing what is now book 3, our first draft of this.
Yeah.
The nun showed up at one point, and both me and my dad went, "Who the hell is this? And what are you doing?"
Yeah.
This was not part of the plan whatsoever, and you're ruining things. And as my mom has done many times before, I don't know, they just showed up. Let's figure it out. And it just kind of went on the back burner for a while until, we figured out that's going to be book 3. Let's do what's actually book 1 now. And then the nun showed up at the end of Tony's chapter again. And we were like, we don't know who this is. Why do you keep bringing them up?
Oh my goodness.
And
I was like,
we
she
just had
wants
to
to
piece it
play.
together.
Yeah.
She was so integral
to her.
Yeah.
Right. But
that's what you wonder. It's like how they could get stuck in a corner. Like, how does this fit? How does this fit? And then
Yeah, because there is a way of writing for me, and I've heard of other people doing this, and I think it's so cool when it happens, when you're just typing away, and it was like, and Tony goes into the room, and the people are moving things out, and there's a dead body, and it's his great grandfather, and Sarah was gone, and there's a nun there, and I'm like, well, who are you?
Well, who are you? Yeah.
And I just like, I got some things to say. And I'm like, let's hear them. What is it? And I was like, oh my gosh, there's this odd dichotomy of somebody in a nun's habit that's not been worn prominently since the 1950s, who is working on behalf of Providence. So it's like, well, aren't you interesting? Aren't you a little conundrum? And I was like, had to let her play. I had to let her tell me what was going on and why she was wearing the habit and why she left Catholicism. And
that's neat. Oh yeah, on that point of the neat thing you guys do, I think the best characters in fiction, like one of the books that has some of the best characters, Lonesome Dove, which your favorite book, Rich. Mm-hmm. One lesson I got from Lonesome Dove was the cook character, for example. This is not spoilers for the book; it's a very small thing. The cook character for the book would ring the bell for the bell for dinner to people come forward. Turns out he just rings the bell because he likes ringing the bell. Like it's he just rings the bell. That's his thing, and it's just his character quirk. And you go like, that tells you a lot about him. And I think the character aspect you all did here that I loved was you had a visual and something that's deeply integral, like a nun on a motorcycle. What? Like what just that? Why is there a nun on a motorcycle? That's just not an image you put in your head that instantly makes you curious and going, who is this person? And a lot of times you get introduced to another Joe Schmo who you just forget about, but every time you reappeared with a character, you gave them enough characteristics, something to go, oh yeah, that's the nun who I remember the phone call that Ashanti's father had, oh yeah, the nun's the person who gives us the good stock market tips, so that we can live, which explained why Ashanti and their family was able to survive, because they were getting help from the nun who's conniving and helping this whole plot move forward. And so even those nuggets, I'm like, oh, that's the nun.
That's the nun. Yeah.
And so you interwove whatever you guys did in this edit. I'm just like, oh, amazing. And so that was just a neat character thing. And I can't say this. I said this. I would love to say I said this, but Esme from Grimdark Magazine, who read your book, has a great quote about some of your characters. And this is what Esme says, an absolute, as describing your cast of characters, there's an absolute asshat of a disgraced ex-game show host with a god complex, an enigmatic nun without faith, a snarky assistant with some addiction problems, my personal favorite, and an Nazi with a foul mouth, and an interdimensional being with a flair for drama. You can expect some hysterical shenanigans to ensue. And just that description of your characters, you did a great job at creating this hodgepodge of absurd sense. Absurd sense. I loved that. And we don't get enough of that in fiction.
That's the thing. They're absurd on paper, and then when you meet them, they feel real.
Exactly.
Like they're real characters, but if you were to write down their character traits, they feel ridiculous.
They're not just there for the bit, though. That's the great part. It's not just
This is going to sound like I'm just being really way too biased, but I'll say it anyway. One of the things I love about Terry Pratchett and is he makes things that are very absurd of, like, if you were to describe what happens with in the books within Discworld, it's ridiculous. But then when you read it, it feels real. Like, oh, this is actually this character. This is Death. This is this type of character. And that's kind of what you guys are really capturing there with these characters of the ridiculous on paper. You wouldn't think it would work, but when you finally meet them, they're real. They're there.
That's just an interesting process. Yeah.
That's what an amazing.
We had
First of all, thank you. That's amazing.
Thank you. But I think that's probably like happening because there are three of us, and whenever we would come forward and say, all right, there's an interdimensional being with a weird afro and he wears women's jewelry.
Yeah,
and Jacob's like, Mom,
yeah,
no. And I was like,
seems like Jacob was the fun police.
Yes.
No Nazis.
Yeah,
no,
Jacob-
it's
Jacob-
true.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
hell, Jacob.
Jacob would throw a lot of flags on a lot of fields.
no. And I was like, yes. And the reason for this, and then like, so a lot of this is really just saying like, this is who showed up in my head, and I don't know why, but this is the way they look, and maybe for some thematic reasons, and but like convincing Jacob that they needed to be in there, I had to be like really, really deep with it. It's like, why is Sarah wearing all of this jewelry? And it's just like, well, that's a good question. Why is he wearing the jewelry? And it was like, he's weak and he's pulling resources out of the earth stones. That's why he's doing it. And that's not mentioned until the very end when Chaos meets him. It's just like, I see what you're doing there. I see. So a lot of that is just me like convincing my son that I need to play.
Well, to me, that's the part that, like, I think real people are weird. Like we were talking earlier about, like, what makes the comedy so. Like, I think the funniest types of people are the people that have no idea that they're funny. They're just weird, and everybody's weird.
Yep.
So
Yeah, so true.
But when we talk about like these people have to feel like real people, when I hear, hey, we have an interdimensional being with an afro and necklaces, it's like, okay, that's fine, but why? They must have a reason. It can't just be weird for weird's sake.
It's not
So
just
then
an
I think
afro, it's
sometimes-
black and white afro.
Sometimes
Even
me and Jacob we're running behind with the mythos going, oh, okay, well that could be this.
Yeah.
We can shoehorn them in here.
Wiki going, okay, well that's fine. That we can put that here.
Well, you know what's cathartic about this is I now see with our none on a motorcycle and none obsessed with great cars and all, big fan of these older sports cars and all this. Then when we actually get to see her perspective, we see her meeting Voldemort in his classic Mercedes. His Mercedes sports car, and it's like maybe one day you can actually drive one of these things. And she's fascinated as a young girl, and you see the kind of the origin of her interest in these sport cars, and just
So cool.
right. So I imagine, Jacob, that's probably a little bit of a you to justify that little not on a motorcycle thing.
There was a nudge. There was
a nudge. But also there's a good confidence of you don't need to justify it in the moment, but it's cathartic when it does happen. And it happens organically rather than the author explaining to you of like, hey, don't worry, here's the answer. Here's why I did it. It just comes up. And it's
right. Because I think weird for weird's sake can be fun, and it can take you pretty far. But if it takes you to a point where you then get to realize why they're weird, now I feel connected to this character.
Right.
In a way that I didn't before. They were just funny.
Totally. Totally get that. And that this is something else. Sorry, Jacob, you're frozen on our end. I'll give another second in case I'm interrupting.
Tell Amanda to get off the internet, buddy.
Yeah, I think.
There he goes. Yeah.
All right. Well, as we're waiting for Jacob to come back, it's just a black screen now.
He'll figure it out.
But he was getting to that point of explaining that once you understand more of their quirks and weirdness, it makes them feel so real. Because correct me if I'm wrong, Jacob was saying that people in real life are just as strange and weird. You just got to essentially find out their quirks. And I guess John and Amy, did you two see that approach of trying to? Oh, we got Jacob back.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Perfect.
He just started a new question. You're just in time.
Yes,
Great.
and I was asking John. I was asking them about these quirks and the weirdness of characters and finding out more about them. It seems like you all went about the approach of person exists and things they do exist. Let's find a reason why, and that's how you made the characters. Yeah. Is that it?
I do think a lot of that happened because of. I mean, this is our like we said last night. Our ace in the hole is kind of. We have she's a really interesting writer with great voice for characters. And like, if something starts talking to her and she gives us pages or it's like, I'm doing this scene and it's like, we've gone over it. I don't know how many times. And we all know what's supposed to happen in that scene, but a nun shows up at the end of it. It's like, it was really hard in the beginning when we were working together. We would go, no, why? You can't. But then as we got further and further into it, we would all start to go, well, wait a minute, how does this fit?
Yeah.
Let's because we were just started to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Totally makes sense.
And I think there is a kind of like a world story kind of sense that, like narratives can speak to you and you can kind of like, plug into a collective storytelling and say like, who wants to come forward and play and who wants to be a part of this project, and we can just start to weave them and it starts to work. And if you know your craft and you know how to weave it, then it's just fun. It's just like how you just pick up these little sparkly pieces and start weaving them.
And then with the research you would put in of how their cultural background impacted of who they were as well, all that research came into play and made it make sense too. So,
and you guys don't waste dialogue, and you don't waste the actual monologuing or descriptions as well around the characters. I have an example I want to pull up. I'm not going to do a performance; it'll just be a paragraph. But
come on, Austin.
It was one and done. But this example of where it feels so satisfying because you all even use descriptors about settings to help describe the character. Obviously, with Howard Winfried, the daughter, the picture of the daughter staring throughout the first part of our introduction to Howard. But here's just a paragraph you use when Nessa first is introduced to Howard, and I think it's emblematic of more descriptions you did throughout the book. So you all say this. Liv swung the doors wide open. Nessa's stomach lurched. Howard Winfield's office seemed nothing more than a transparent glass cube clinging to the top of the building. She could see Manhattan in all directions, its steel monoliths, its busy people, its yellow cabs scooting like toys below. The Empire State Building thrust upward like a middle finger. At the edge of the island, the World Trade Towers, 2 columns of drab gray, curtained off any bay views. It must have angered Howard to no end, these obstructions to a better view of his empire. So even those 2 snippets there, you're describing the setting, but on top of doing that, and sorry, this goes into prose later too, but just what you're describing the setting, but at the same time, Eiffel Tower like a middle finger, showing this is Howard's personality. This is the type of guy you're getting introduced to, that he would rather have a view than these ugly buildings in front of his empire. Just all this building into the personas of people. It's just super well done. Where again, can't believe it's a debut novel.
Well,
it's
also
unreal.
how much nicer it is with this is 5 main POVs. And instead of, it's not even, you have more POVs than the 5 main characters. There's actually a lot more being told through flashbacks and stories instead of just a kind of standard process of, all right, introduce character, here's where they are now, and let me flash back to my childhood and thing. And like, and then we'll move on to the next one. The next is just kind of standard process everyone's seen every time. No, we don't get that. We actually get people's backstories in letters from a different person's perspective. Or with the nun, we actually get her flashback and her story closer to the end, but we get a lot of her through every other POV. Same thing with, I already mentioned before, but Lucia, we get a lot of her through someone else's perspective. So then when we actually get to her POV and her flashback, it just comes across far more organic. And that happens throughout the entire book. Instead of just introduce, then flashback, introduce, flashback. It's all jumbled together in the best possible way. And it keeps it fresh where you don't feel like, I don't know, just something you've read before of like, oh, okay, now time for the flashback. It never felt like that.
No, never.
Because also,
So cool.
it was almost never the flashback of the POV character. The POV character is learning about someone else's story, which is much better.
Yeah. I think that was something that we were doing a little bit and then got way better at after we had our phone call with Janny. And Janny was explaining to us, like we brought up in the spoiler-free version of this video we did last night, like Howard wouldn't place a piece of paper down, he would throw it. That use every example that you can. You're in his environment. Tell us why this is his environment. Does he own it? How does he feel about it? What are his actions like that tell us more about him? Where does he look? Like everything can be an example of who this person is.
Yeah.
And even with a character like Ashanti, how she spelled things and you could tell her age, and she had this spunk to her, and seeing the worldview from Howard's office versus Ashanti's room versus even how she looked out of her window, seeing this. I'm failing to remember the name.
The Zangbeto.
Zangbeto.
Yeah.
Thank you. Would have never gotten that. The Zangbeto.
Have you ever? Do you know those? You can Google them. Those are real.
Let me see. Zang.
Yeah, they're really fun.
Yeah, they're really interesting.
I'm probably. Oh, whoa!
Ooh.
Super cool.
Neat.
Yeah,
That is cool.
You can watch a video about that. It's like a real ceremony in voodoo, and
neat.
I loved that about that the West African tradition of the Zangbeto and the kind of the night police that they were. And wow, this is really off topic, but it was. But when I was talking about it, I was just like, oh man, John's like, that's like Batman, and I'm like, oh, it goes in.
Yeah, well, that's like that. That's like that research. It's like, okay, we're going to do something in Ghana, so we start researching. Or Amy is big into research as cultures and what like will be there. And it's like, look at this I found. It's like, oh, it's like Batman. We're using that. I mean,
yeah. Awesome. Yeah. It really came through in that advice from Jenny Warts. I noticed that all throughout of when you change perspectives, the setting changed, their worldview changed, what they said made so much sense. So yeah, a lot of that just to say characters, great, and beyond great. You only gave a 4.25 though, so that's
I said it was really great.
I thought it was spectacular.
Didn't really care for Tony.
Yeah.
Tony's very young. Tony's
very young. Ashanti's
very impressionable.
You're meeting people at the
Give him
beginning.
Give him time.
I think that's a similar thing of Tony and Ashanti felt very similar to both of them, but Ashanti had more spunk and fun and
I could see that totally.
Yeah.
When how she's written is a little bit more fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Do you want to go on to plot?
Yeah, this is the chonker one.
Here we go.
Well, we've been talking about the plot a lot.
Yeah. We did by the way, this is the worst structured review we've ever done. Welcome to the Ramble. This is like we
broke you. We broke the Ramblers.
we don't know how to do this with authors. We're bad at it. Okay, plot 5 stars. 5 stars.
5 star plot.
Me.
5 stars. Rewrite the Catholic part by.
Floored me, and why this book's a 5 star overall. Spoiler, world building, I give 5 stars as well, but the plot floored me. Like I will use this book in the future to learn how to use the writing tricks you all did to understand like how you interwove this is beyond impressive. It's the first thing when I finished this book and dropped it when Rich and I are on the phone, that's what we gushing, just going, we've never read anything like this.
We didn't know you could write a book like this.
How do you do that? And not in the sense like, of course, people have done 5 acts before, but it's everything we've discussed throughout this entire review that a paragraph of me monologuing about how you guys did the plot is going to fail to describe how it was actually done. But that the promise, progress, payoff, I think a great point you made in the emotional impact section was you already gave us the 3 mini acts in the beginning. You hooked the reader, promised you could deliver, and then the essential point I want to talk about here. Sorry, there's a lot of parts to talk about, but the midpoint, and we talked about this off camera a little bit last recording, where Lucia and the nun, the backstory is given. And that point is a critical hit or miss for the reader, because at that point, hey, we trust you after Act 1. How are you going to bring us to the finale? There's a big, what you could say, a reader who didn't like it, it's a lot of information. Could be an info dump.
Yeah.
Or it could be, oh, they're jumping the shark. It's too weird. Like, I thought it was going to be this. And the explanation is just kind of weird and out there.
Why are we in Ireland?
Yeah, Ireland. Like, that's not real.
What is that place?
What is that place? Yeah.
This is what I don't buy.
This place called Ireland.
How did you all go about that? Your nerves of that scene, because that's a critical point in the novel.
Oh, I do remember nerves for that.
There were nerves.
We actually put it off for a long time, I think.
And beta readers were really important to that.
Yeah.
Like we kept putting, that was that part, and the part that we call Sorrow Explains It All to You. Those two kept getting pushed in front of people and like little guinea pigs.
Yeah.
And I have a great friend who's Mary. Her name is Mary, and Mary is named after her. And Mary's habits are based on another friend. So those are 2 very dear friends of mine and one character. But Mary, my friend who was reading, like, she would call me. It was like, the nun's a lizard? No. And I mean, like, so I was like, okay, try again.
More work. Yeah.
More work. And it was like, and then I had to make her believe it. And I kept, and I would send her, she's like, better, but, and then this. So it's like, believe me, that part where you guys just told us about that is not the worst I have heard. So, I mean, but Mary was, and some other people, and Mary's not the only one, but we all really kind of tested the believability with beta readers, and we really, encourage writers to take that step and to listen to what people say about the believability, what's going on, because that was really essential for us to hit that. And my friend was not a genre reader.
No, she was very new to her.
She reads nonfiction, so she was just like, if I can believe it, then you're good.
Then you've made.
I think that was really essential, is like who our beta readers were, which was Mary, who does not read really any genre, I don't think. And my grandfather was our other beta reader, which is like, if we can get these 2 people to buy it, we're good.
Also because my dad, and I hope he doesn't mind, but like my dad,
God. I know what you're going to say.
Well, no, I don't think you do. My dad is an older gentleman, and he might not remember, what happened 200 pages ago, unless you put the nun on the motorcycle. You know what I'm saying? Like, you had to be like
an indelible image.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was a big part of that. I think.
So that was like, it was like, okay, we've got a lot of moving parts, and we've got a lot of moving pieces and a lot of moving characters. And, Mary would say that too. She's like, I don't remember this, and I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, okay, that needs to be
That's
bigger.
almost like you'd need a light.
You need a special light on this character. You need to slow down and for something to happen. It was like the fisherman that Ashanti met, and then he turned out to be, he reappeared at the end, and along with some other characters, that chaos has been there the whole time, and that took a while to get right.
Yes,
and Mary was like, you didn't, it didn't make a big enough impression. I didn't know. And then I would have to try again. And then she'd be like, better. And, she was just lovely, because she never told me what to do. She's like, no, I don't buy it. No. So
for me, it's like, that was nerve wracking, because that's the payoff, right? It's a payoff chapter. Lucia's story, Mary's story, Sorrow Explains It All. that's the payoff chapter, right? After that, it's all falling action at the conference. So like that payoff chapter, it's like it's that trust that Richard was talking about. We make you wait for a minute to get there. That was nerve-wracking. And then the other nerve-wracking part is like for me fitting the lore in, this is all Lovecraft stuff. This is all Lovecraft's lore. There are light ones and Shoggoths and deep ones, and it's like we're riffing on all of that and twisting it and making it fit and doing all that stuff and putting it in there. But we just got to make it ours and make it enough to where people would go, okay, And yes, it was nerve. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, definitely. Think of the layers and how the information is conveyed is done in a more complex way that makes it far more interesting and fun. Okay, first layer is this is Lucia's POV, it's her first POV, but we've also just been introduced to her quite a bit. Like we spent a lot of time with her. We know her personality. So we're already in a comfortable place with her. It's not completely new. Then we get more of Sister Mary. Again, we get a focus on her, but we've already been kind of introduced to her. And then we get immediately big payoff drop, just kind of at your face. It's not teased any longer of actually Sister Mary is half alien. That's why she's wearing the habit.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay. Now you go, what? You just dropped that on me. And now we get Sister Mary's own flashback and backstory with her own POV, telling Lucia. All of that done, and then at the tail end, we get Sorrow actually kind of explaining far more of these cosmic details. That's such a nicer way to present it in a far more interesting package than just, I don't know, just it's sister. Like if it just started with Sister Mary's POV and she's explaining things, not as cool.
And you really did write this book like it was a chessboard. The whole analogy used throughout the book in that prologue, then the encore. I love that you guys labeled it like a play too. Just lovely.
Yeah.
And so that ending section was so thrilling to read, of seeing chaos and sorrow, right? Having that back and forth, and having them use. I'm a big chess player, so I was geeking out, going like, queens and rooks. I just like that you appreciated.
They mentioned a
culture.
chess piece. Yeah,
I was so down. And so as you were going back, and Chaos was narrating in the end, saying, "Okay, now we're going to go to the rook, the queen," and it would go to these different characters that we've been following. And we were having Chaos narrate this to us, and then the prologue started to make sense, and the finale's making sense. And now I just feel like I'm being presented this. That's where it feels so epic. It just felt so grand.
The little tease of Sorrow looking at everything, grieving over the loss of his queen, but then looking at Claire and going, "Chaos made a mistake. If he wanted to take any piece off the chessboard, he should have taken Claire."
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm hyped. I want to know what's going to happen.
So exciting. Excited.
That's what I want to hear.
I don't think you guys understand. Like, I am as excited for book 2 of this than I am like Red God. Like, I am ready to read this book.
That's crazy.
I'm genuinely ending like I need to read the next book. So actually finish it now, please. Get on it.
I mean, that's just an old theater trick from reading scripts about the most perfect Aristotelian arc. Always the end circles back to the beginning. So that's like, can we do that? And it's like, that's...
You guys act like you did nothing. Like you,
and that came way late. You did that so late. Yeah.
I have to be honest. Like that Sorrow Chaos scene and all of that. Like once it started,
wizard throwdown.
Yeah, the big wizard battle. I mean, just like that was probably the easiest part to zip together, and then we had to just go back and continually making sure and pulling those thread tights on the other end of it,
right?
Because like this is how we knew we wanted it to end.
Yeah.
So we just had to like make sure all of those things like went through like really, like that were strung really tight.
Yeah.
So that part was a
Weirdly enough,
little
I think-
easier to write.
I think
we
a lot
didn't
of the
talk-
tweaking that we did in that chapter was less about like making sure the threads came together correctly, and a lot of us talking about that chapter was, is chaos quite right? Should we make him a little angrier here? Like it was more about getting the character right, because that part had been
Yeah.
planned from the beginning.
Yeah, it was more performance.
Right.
Yeah.
And then like looking into the future too, it's just like making sure like, you know, like very, very minute, like the way he says absolutely everything, all of his words, his Asara's words, just like, does that line up with that, and that in the future? And just like making sure we're not hamstringing ourselves.
That makes
And
sense.
So that's, you know, that, and I've never written like a sequel to anything. So it was just like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to really be careful about everything Chaos says. And it came down to what Chaos was saying.
Yeah.
And we haven't even mentioned this yet, but I get the big pull and interest as well beyond discovering the mystery. It's not just like, hey, it's not just about, hey, mystery unveil Cthulhu because it's revealed right away. It's how humanity reacts and the big buildup of what's humanity's plan and creating the hold, and this cool concept of, okay, they're actually going to have a structure near the Cthulhu so that you can research it, and that whole thing has me interested of like, what are they going to do?
Are we going to get a fun like alien scene of, you know, dreams kind of go crazy in the hallways, and now, you know, some people have been infested with, you know,
I
controlled
can't
by the dream.
wait
Yeah.
for you guys to see what's next.
Let me tell you.
Wait.
Oh,
There's
You know, the
stuff goes down at the Constellation. Nothing.
but that
The amount of
that-
confidence I can say this confidently because I trust you guys on it. But with how lovely the structure is and how much we're raving about the plot, I'm reminded of like Hyperion for me. Of Hyperion, the big draw for me was the unique structure of the plot. It's Canterbury Tales in space, super cool. And that's what drew me. With book 2, it was good. But the structure, it was, book 2 to me was like, it's a standard sci-fi book. Like I've seen that kind of structure before. All the character, everything else was fine, but because we were given such a unique structure,
right.
getting a normal structure in book 2,
If there's anything they need, it's more pressure, right?
Yeah, no,
it's-
and that's the pressure I just wanted to add
I don't
on.
think
Keep it on. Keep
I
it
don't-
on, Richard.
I don't think I'm capable of writing a straight.
No,
narrative.
she's really
Wonderful.
not.
That's
Good.
all we wanted to hear.
Music to our
You're,
ears.
you're not taking the next book going, all right, and now we're just going to do a whole book from, you know, Tony's perspective. It's just
No.
a Tony
No.
book. There's no flashbacks.
Hey, stay
There's
weird.
no anything else.
Stay weird,
Let me
Mittens.
tell
Stay weird. You
still
better.
haven't even met some of our favorite characters. I will say
Oh, lovely.
Wonderful.
Lovely.
I just wanted to pack on that, like, stay weird, please, because that was,
Oh, he gets
No problem.
it's got to be weird.
But
There were moments when we were nervous
writing,
about book 1. Like, I don't know if there's enough to make a book here. Like, is there enough weirdness because of what's coming up?
Well, I mean, like you're making it. It's the same world. I mean, like it doesn't get, you know, like you just meet more people, and there's just like more variety to the weirdness,
And things go really wrong.
and things go really wrong. And what I love about who's coming is like there are some people who are coming I genuinely love. Like it brings a tear to my eye to think of these people, and I cannot wait to share them with you. And it's not just in book 2. I mean, there's like a character in book 3 who's not even here yet. And
The person that starts book 3, when we thought book 3 was book 1.
Yeah.
The very first thing that we start book 3 with, which was what we thought was the beginning of the story, we love that character.
Wow.
So
oh my goodness.
we can't wait to share all this
Yeah.
with you. We just can't wait.
Lovely. The plot was thrilling. There's I have no idea what else to say on this section because we've said our thoughts. Do you have any other pieces? They're teasing us hard, and I just don't like how much we're being teased because now I can't read the thing yet.
We're at a point where we're really, you know, like we've almost gotten this out, and we're really starting this next part in earnest, and we're just really excited now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like
As are we.
this one's coming
Yes.
out, and we're putting it to bed. But like at the moment, like our personal hype is really high
Yes.
for book 2 because we're just so excited because we know what we're going to do, and a lot of it has been written. We just need to reshape it in the Janny Words method, and we need to, we're just so excited about what's coming.
And I
Can't
think
wait.
like the indie journey that you do, it's like, you get to a point where it's like, we're getting the website and this stuff. and all this.
Like
It's
we're in
we,
that part.
We can't wait to
Yeah.
go back to it's like doing the weird stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is true. But I mean, writing book 3 helped, and because what we thought was book 1 is now book 3, it was so overwhelmingly complicated. Like, book 1 is the ground floor.
Yeah.
Like you said, Mom, don't overhype it too much, but it is the ground floor. There's a lot that happens.
Wow.
All right, I hate to say our expectations are so high, but it's like
They are.
we cannot.
I
we
really
cannot
think
win.
we can deliver it. I really do.
Yeah, I really
love it.
do. Like,
I-
'Cause
I
it's
love
just-
book 2 and 3.
When people said they love book 1, I was like, really?
Really?
Okay.
This was like,
This is
we had to keep backing up to make it make sense.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, then what's coming should be pretty cool.
Awesome. Do you want to go on to world building, Rich?
Yes.
What'd you give out of 5 stars?
Yeah, 5 stars.
5 stars. for me
5-star
as well.
world building. Floored for me. The amount of research you guys put into it, especially you, Amy, is clear. It's very evident the amount of work you put in to make our world feel like our world, but beyond that of melding of it takes a great degree of consideration on taking this cosmic fantasy, cosmic horror element and thinking how would different parts of our world react. We talked about it already before. That's hard to do. Especially there is a degree of ease when you're doing a fantasy novel because the reader is going to give you some degree of leeway. It's a completely new world. People can react in different ways. Like you have a lot more freedom.
Yeah.
When you're adding fantasy elements to our world, we know our world. So when it doesn't quite match up, it's far more evident. And so I understand like that is very hard to do. And you guys executed it great.
And just some of those aspects, we obviously you're transporting us back to the 1990s, and I loved your technology with both the singularity talk, but specifically the airlifts, the R-lifts, so airlifts with Claire, and that entire section, which we didn't talk.
We always mess this up. How is it pronounced? We never
We're gonna
pronounce
do
anything
like
right.
like R lifts, like AR, like artificial,
Lift or our
LIF,
lives?
R-lifts.
Lift.
Our
Lift
lift.
because there's no E on the end.
Got it.
Yeah.
And
it's
we
R
didn't
lifts.
talk about it much, but that seeing the progress of the R-lifts, of how at
Yeah.
first they're just repeating lines, and then all of a sudden we see one of them grieving, and or what we see one storytelling. We're like,
that-
wait, why are what
That's
the hell? Why are
that's
they
the
telling
horror element there.
stories?
Of
Yeah.
her
How have we
telling-
not talked
Oh,
about that?
Okay, yeah,
How
that-
have we not talked about that?
There's a whole other part.
What?
Claire talking about and going, telling the
Oh.
story of
Bob.
of an R-lift named Bob, and going, uh-oh.
Who the hell's Bob?
You shouldn't remember that. And then you're going to the grave, like, oh, she built a grave for him. Does she know we killed Bob? Uh-oh.
And then it also justifies more this cult that arises behind Claire.
Yes.
Who's like, damn, Claire's not.
She's spooky.
What's going on with Claire? And
Claire's
also,
not right.
not right. And then in the end scene with Sorrow confirming that, saying should have taken out Claire. You're like, what the hell's going on? And these R-lifts and the technology created incredible. And so the world is so different as well. And not in a million years could I have guessed starting this book that you were going to do like AI type progress in an apocalyptic book. That's bonkers. And then it makes so much sense. And it adds to that cosmic horror sense. Everything you guys did and why we think so highly of the plot and the world is everything weaves. Everything weaves. And then again, a big world aspect of this, of finding out about the world government, is we get little newspaper clips and we're getting updates from the characters over span of time. It's not just thrown at you of like, hey, at the end here we have a world government now. And also it's not just indirectly info. It doesn't feel info dumped. It's spread throughout. I just can't say enough about that. That's how exciting it was to read. And then technology, we talked religions, the acolytes and Providence, and Providence itself, to see the perspective of Ashanti's family was so neat to understand, okay, this is a religion that is now emboldened and feels so justified. And look, we can account for this apocalypse, and now they're starting to get a lot more calls, and how excited the father's getting over new members, whether it's for money, but also to look at all these new members that are coming on.
Sure.
And
yeah.
Just every aspect. I mean, it's also up Rich and I's alley. Just when you throw in science, religion, politics, we're like, cool. Just give me more world stuff. Lovely.
Also, I appreciated personally on the art lifts of the importance of the aestheticism of the art lifts. So that actually is a key important factor. It is not about. It's not necessarily about the ones and zeros and the logic behind it. That's all important to how these things function. Mm-hmm. But for them to be alive, for them to be real, they also have to have beauty. They have to have, because the form defines the form defines the mind. Yeah. You can't just, and a lot of this is, if it was just ones and zeros calculating, these minds would not be able to properly understand our own lives, and they would not be properly applicable. I think for someone reading this going like, why would Oliver Dawson, Lucia design this whole fake world of like, they're trying to create AI to solve these real world problems. Why are we creating this? Why are we spending so much time creating an island, making the island actually real, having these Arlists actually do a job? And what's the point? They're making these Arlists just dick around on an island. How is this helping? It helps because if the Arlift doesn't understand our form and our needs, then they can't actually help.
Yeah, it's all a question of perception, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to perceive what that problem is. Yeah.
We are not our minds. We are a combination of our mind, body, and soul, and they're important. Me living my life, I live my life with two hands. It defines what I can do. It defines how I think about different problems. If I suddenly lose my left hand, I'm going to think about problems differently. I'm going to have new problems that I never would have thought of in the first place. And so we are not just our memories. We are not just our bodies. We are a combination of everything. And so the focus on the aesthetics of the artist, I thought, was poignant.
I mean, not only the mechanics of having like arms and legs, but the amount of communication you would lose if you didn't have a face. Like think about the amount of times in a day that you look at somebody and they give you a nod or their eyebrows raised. Like that's such a core part of how we talk to each other and treat each other and read emotions. Like to take that away you wouldn't be human.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do think when we're talking about themes, one of the big ones that we didn't hit, and it kind of comes in more down the road, is in creating this, Doss's life's work and Lucia's supercharging it. It's that Frankensteinian theme of do we as creators ascend to godhood? What exactly have we done? What exactly have we created? And how does that play out down the road of us ascending? So,
how much of Oliver's sacrifice is for Lucia, but it's also for the Arlists of, okay, let's make a copy. Like, we're going to sacrifice a section of the Arlists to do the actual world government's thing. We're going to have to tailor them toward military missions. but we're going to sacrifice them so that the Arlifs in the hold can actually stay on their own and they can develop as organically as you know
possible.
artificial life can really develop.
Right.
So, yeah, no, all of that is lovely to think about.
Yes, and that was just each aspect and each character provided such a cool world building element, and that's not even to mention. I know we're a fantasy sci-fi channel generally. You guys, bunch of fantasy sci-fi, and having the fantastical element with chaos and adding this godhood level threat on top of it just brings. So it's aliens, it's gods, it's technology. It's world government. There's not a major element you guys really don't hit, so it's fascinating to look at in its entirety. I'm also thinking about Chaos's, who we didn't talk much about him and his voice at the end of the book, but you just see you can get away with so much because it's literal chaos. So as a villain character, the villain makes perfect sense. You don't need to justify why doesn't Chaos just end the world? Well, he can. I mean, you're saying he could do all these things, but it's just the fact that Chaos is your orator in this sense in this finale. It's both a foe that has a flaw of has an investment in not destroying everything because then doesn't have chaos. You need to have some sort of order in order for there to be chaos. If there's nothing, then chaos can't exist. And another theme I guess you guys are getting at there of chaos relies on there being maybe it's a theme about entropy. I don't know what you guys are getting at here, but just another layer of how chaos needs and thrives on what the humans are doing, and he loves playing in this game.
Well, the fact that life in the rest of the universe without Cthulhu, without the Great Death, has entropy. Of there is no progress. There's no
show.
Anything.
I got no show. Yeah,
exactly. And so that's why humans are just so entertaining. Is we have death. We have an actual great end, and that's guess why Chaos won't want to completely destroy it.
Yeah.
And if he brings Cthulhu back and without actually wipe out all life, and then Cthulhu is there, that's not chaos. That's just an end. So he wants the back and forth.
Yeah, that really goes back to, for me, a character I absolutely adore is Heath Ledger's version of the Joker, because it's so there's so much of that captures that Loki aspect of chaos. That's apart from the Norse myth. It's kind of like a modern version of chaos that I was really launching from, and some of the things that he says, it was I wouldn't live without you. You complete me. Yeah. So that's why that thing about it's I can't exist without you. I need you. And Chaos's bit where he says it's like watching paint dry out there. I'm on other planets and there's just rocks. I can't this is the show. And so there's the show metaphor, and there's and Chaos is a dude that needs to be entertained. Yeah. He's just and that's John riffing is how we got to that aspect of it, and kind of getting into the lore of it, and the not only Norse lore or
Lovecraftian.
That is a Lovecraft it's a big mix. Yeah. Sorry, buddy.
You have to say it because you're the only you can pronounce that character's name the best.
I think it's pronounced Nyarlathotep is who Chaos is based on.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a Lovecraftian. That's part of his mythos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything is firmly entrenched from Lovecraft. We didn't deviate. We mashed our stuff in. We didn't deviate very far.
Yeah.
Everything is just emulating things of the past. It's not that it's not you didn't invent writing, but you did something incredible. And I know you guys won't give yourself props, but every story is that. I can say that for anything, John. Give yourself some modicum of credit. That's it. That's it.
At the very beginning,
these two carried me.
I didn't read Lovecraft. I didn't understand it, and these two have always loved it. And so, I would always ask them, "Can you explain this to me? Why would anybody want to worship Cthulhu?" And and they would try to explain it. I was like, I don't get it. And they would try to explain it again, using some kind of modern examples about why people would vote against their interests, or why people would want to watch destructive movies, or drink alcohol when it could make you sick, or smoke when it could give you lung cancer. It was just like, these are the self-destructive aspects of humanity, and worshiping Cthulhu is acknowledging that that's who we are. It's worshiping Cthulhu is like embracing humanity. And I'm like, I'd really like to, for some reason, because it's important to you guys, like write a story to explain that.
Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic.
It's just kind of just like at the base of it. That's just kind of like these guys were always having a shortcut and talking to each other about it. Mm-hmm. And then when Jacob came in with his idea, it was just like, yeah, I think I'd like to.
Which was Lovecraftian.
Yeah. But it was like, I want to play. I want to make this. I want to make this something that people who don't understand this can understand, and because I don't understand it, so it was just a journey for me understanding it.
Well, I haven't read any Lovecraftian stories, and so your book is kind of an introduction to the Lovecraftian
and I don't think you have
stuff,
to, right?
And
like you can still enjoy it.
I didn't have any experience. Like, I just know the word Cthulhu. That's literally it. But I thoroughly enjoyed all those aspects. You don't need to know Lovecraft to enjoy the book.
Don't need to, and there's some Easter eggs there if you do, but if you don't, like I said, my friend Mary went through that for you.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say I got in my notes of, like, I couldn't remember. Ashanti was talking about the lights in the swamp, and I just like, or the introduction of the weird swamp lights. Like, I don't know the word. Like, you guys have a word for. Like, those are actually from Lovecraftian horror, but
Shoggoths,
Shoggoths,
yeah.
But I just go weird swamp lights. I don't need to know the term.
It's good enough for you.
It's good enough.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then when Sorrow explains it all, he explains where where they come from and what they used them for, and how they all that is kind of explained, which I really like, because a lot of times in Lovecraft stories it's like the great Cthulhu is imprisoned in R'lyeh under the sea. You don't really ever get why or how, what really, and it's like that was part of what it's like. No, we should probably say why and how.
Yeah.
So that was another aspect of it. Like, let's do that.
Yeah, it was always my thing too. It's like, we're never going to call him Cthulhu.
Yeah.
We're just because that's who he is, but it seems to me like a whole new vocabulary. Like the light ones are the Shoggoths. The travelers are the deep ones, and the chaos is Nyarlathotep, and I probably said that wrong, but
Sorrow is an elder god.
So all of these things, correlate, but I never wanted to call them those things because that was a part of the translation of it.
Well, it also takes away a little bit of. I mean, for the most part, I don't know, because then if they're actually just called by the Lovecraftian terms, then it's like, wait, is Lovecraft in this world real? And did he just come up with this?
Yeah.
I don't. I think it would.
I also think
if
you call it Cthulhu, it almost makes the sleeping one feel like a toy. Like it's almost becomes an Easter egg in itself. Like, I know what this is.
Such a pop culture thing. Yeah.
Exactly. That it kind of removes the terror factor from it, for me at least.
Well, there's also something to be said of when you name something, the longer, the more complicated the name, the less scary it is.
True.
Nyarlathotep, are you scared?
But there's some D&D like thread I saw, kind of the joke, kind of explain this of, you could have a sword called the Great, King Theonon's Great Divider of Masterful Sharpness, or you could have the Throngler. You know,
That one sounds like I kind of want to cover up. I don't know.
Yeah.
That sounds.
no one wants to confront the Throngler. Like, it's just.
Can you say that on YouTube? I don't know. That's.
I don't know.
No one
Now
wants
I
to
want
be
a Throngler,
throngler.
though. I know that.
It's the same
It is
thing of-
funny, but if someone's coming at me with the Throngler, I'm running fast.
You better
Without
know.
a doubt.
Wrong.
But yeah, it's the same thing with the sleeping one. It's simple, unexplainable. It adds that mystery. Rather, you put a name on it, and then it defines it, and then some of the terror goes away.
Hey, people do that in fantasy all the time. Instead of calling them orcs, you call them like Udaks in
Yeah.
Blood and Fire. But what does people all the time call them? Not orcs. Her name fades. What's the name?
Oh, what the Trollocs.
Trollocs. Yeah, Trollocs, not trolls. Like, you know, you put
Yeah.
your own spin, your own word on these other fantasy terms used, makes it feel like your own world. Like,
Yeah.
what if Howard Winfried instead it was like Google Media or like it was Wikipedia? Da, da, da.
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's a bit on the nose. It's like, you know, like
Yeah.
why call it like it's Wikipedia Corp? Oh, okay, what? So you have your own. You're creating your own world. You're letting people come in, but inspired by stuff of the past, of course, and it absolutely comes through. Just again, yeah, 5-star world, 5-star plot. That stuff floored us the absolute most. And want to wrap up with our pro section.
Yeah.
The finale of this, our encore of this video. Out of 5 stars, would you give it?
4.75. Absolutely spectacular.
I gave it the exact same. 4.75. We had almost all the same scores except for I was a little higher on characters. I was a
little higher
lower
on themes.
Yeah, I was and you're on themes. Yeah. Now, absolutely spectacular. What's the thing that stood out to you?
I mean, it comes across the most important aspect of all of it is with the dialogue and characters. I did not feel like, oh, this character is just saying what the authors actually think. This is what a character would say. And that was consistent through all of them. This isn't just the author talking at me. This is the characters talking at me. So each character had amazing voice. The description was perfectly well done. It was efficient with its time and frame, like where you're not repeating yourself ad nauseum of like to a necessary degree, but you repeat yourself in slightly unique ways sprinkled throughout the book. So I'm properly reminded, like you were talking about, Amy, so that, you know, the nun is still memorable 100 pages later because you see her several times. So all of this to say, yeah, I'm trying to think of like, what would I change about the writing?
Well, you
Not
didn't
much.
give it a 5, so you better come up with something. I'm kidding. Thank you, Richard.
Dude,
I love how they're giving you a
4.75.
tough time
I think,
for
well,
Dude,
you know,
4.75 is astounding. That's so
Yes.
kind of you. I'm joking. Thank you.
Yeah, and when we're doing that, I think the thing that will stick in my head, and I've really talked about this to death, but it's that your narrator's voice in the beginning and finale, and the combination between interweaving that with the dialogue and descriptions. Just when we're rating prose, we're talking like at 1 star, it's just distracting, bad prose, etc. At 5 stars, like irreplicable. Like when we read this, it feels like a mitten piece. You know, when we read this, it just feels like, okay, this is unique to your author's voice, and it just sounds super well. And
That
what really
other
came
authors,
across,
when it come next time someone writes, I'm going to be, oh, they're totally writing a type of mitten story. Like you
you can
that's
tell.
I
really-
don't think you could give that out for a first book. Like, I don't like.
Well, that's
Yeah.
why it's not the 5 star. You know, that's why we're
Exactly.
0.25 lower.
I'm
you know?
backing you up. I'm
Exactly.
The
backing
minute
you
we
up.
find the J.A.J. Mitten copycat, we're going to be like, yeah, well, look at that.
We gotta
They're
give it-
copying it.
Yeah.
And the big thing was obviously character voice. I mentioned the scene earlier with Winfield's office. If you guys want to watch, this is for the audience in our spoiler-free review that we did with them and pitch. I read off the first couple paragraphs or so of.
Oh, you did more than read it.
Oh, you performed it, baby.
It was beautiful.
Your
you.
Oscar
That
is
was
in
the
the
best
mail.
It was beautiful.
John, do you have any reading you want to do for us? No pressure. No pressure at all. No,
I mean, do you want to read? This was
he's getting.
the scene Richard
Trying to
liked,
pass the
right?
buck.
You want to read it, Austin?
No,
This is the Winfield
Yeah.
speech, or which
Yeah.
one is this?
Yes,
I would love to hear this.
I would love to hear your process, like what they were hearing when writing this book. This was part of your guys' process.
I am so glad the microphone is not turned at full volume right now.
No, this is just Howard, hon.
Yeah,
at
that's
the
just
end.
Howard.
Yeah,
This
but
is
he's
Howard.
still loud.
Yeah, he's very loud. So this is Howard. This is Howard at the very end when
They're stripping their funding
when
away.
he
They're
drops the
threatening.
bomb on Doss and Lucia about who he really is
Yeah.
and what he's capable of.
At this point, Howard stepped in. Afraid so. I would hate to lose the founding programmers, but I imagine my request for cooperation from Pythia staff regarding military plans will run much more smoothly without you. How is this possible? I asked. The agreement we signed at the outset, Nessa explained, included a clause that dictated a forfeiture of equipment and intellectual property should we default on our responsibilities. Lucia leapt at that. We are not at fault. We submitted all the financial reports on time, in detail, as outlined in the agreement. Miss Santa Maria. Howard held his chin above us. Have you met my lawyer, Fritz? Lucia looked confused. No. Nessa settled her face into a glare that could dissolve stone. Howard found something interesting under his fingernails and focused there. Had my back, Fritz did. At the moment of discovery. Ooh, that was a harrowing moment, was it not? Nessa, my daughter didn't so much as twitch an eyelid, Howard continued. Looking at that monster, at those fluttering pulses under that unearthly white skin, I had to decide, what are my obligations here? Lucia and I were quiet. Where was he going with this? He continued, what are my obligations to humanity at this moment? Even I knew we were looking at an alien. Nothing else was possible. My news team and I were looking at humanity's next great foe. And do you know what happened? A fucking heart attack, Lucia said. Howard lurched forward. His hands never seemed so large. His height never so imposing. Both of us flinched. He was in our faces. Fritz supported me, he said. Nessa supported me, while the rest of my team hemmed and hawed on what to do, pussyfooting around my heart symptoms. Nessa and Fritz backed me. They knew what we might have, and they knew we had to investigate it. He brought a fist down on the table hard. These are the people on my side. They look down the barrel of humanity's greatest find, and they do not flinch. And we did air it. They kept protecting me with legal defenses of our actions, with ideas of charitable giving to offset the damages. We built an airtight empire upon this discovery, and we do not intend to let it go.
It's like he wrote it. That was so well done. And that was why do I want to talk more now about themes and going back to what that whole decision that Howard has to make there, where what do you do in that situation? Do you and obviously his means are not all altruistic for sure, but what do you do? Do you tell humanity? Do you not?
From his mindset of just the bold action decision of him looking at humanity's next threat, humanity's next enemy, and going, if we just bury this, we won't be prepared for the humanity needs to see the enemy.
Yes.
Or else we will never prepare for it.
Yep.
And so he took that leap and chance. Willing to throw humanity into chaos so they will prepare.
Absolutely. Shock and awe.
Shock, but also a not invalid opinion on the subject. Understandable.
Use it as the lesser evil.
Yeah. And
wow. And John, amazing performance. And that is again the dialogue you're writing in this book and description. It reads as you would play it. You all three having a stage background. That's how it sounds to us. That's why it has this. When we're talking about this irreplaceable prose, I read this and go like, oh, these are performers. These are people who.
Well, that's a fun thing. This book I don't think could make a play. You know what I mean? There are books out there where you go like, oh yeah, that would make a great movie, or oh, that would make a good play. this is a story that has the correct medium of a book.
I also
And
think it could be a great movie, though. That would be amazing.
Maybe.
I get that. It won't be a 1-to-1 translation. I get that.
I don't think so. I think
do.
this works perfectly as a book.
No, I gave it 5 stars too. I'm not surprise. I'm saying, but as well, like a part of this scene. I know, Jacob, you have like your film background. Actually, question. Might as well. I'm acting like they're not here. Jacob, would you? Was this a thought of ever having this as a film, TV show, or like where'd this come from? What was your mindset?
It was originally written that way. We didn't start writing it as a book because it was from a screenwriting class where it was television screenwriting was the class. So when I graduated and I showed the script to my parents, and we've talked about this before, we went from there. We started writing it as a TV show. We still have files somewhere of like the scripts of the pilot episode that we were putting together that's now in book 3. But we took a break for a while my dad and I shot a short film that I wrote. And we came back months later, and my mom had been telling me for a while that she thought this was a book. Yeah. And it wasn't until months and months later that we had taken a break from it. And I was like, I think you're right. Mm-hmm. I think... it's too complicated as a TV show. It could be done, but book was the correct medium. I agree with Richard.
Yeah. But coming from performers, we always thought, like when we were writing dialogue, all of us, when we were creating dialogue, it's like we would love for an actor to see this and go, "Oh, I want to play that."
We still talk. You were talking about the scene with like the discovery of the grave for Bob and the break-in and Oliver talking to him and questioning him about what he saw, like. As soon as my dad and I read that my mom sent us that and asked for edits, we were like, this would be so fun to shoot, to cast those performances and set up those camera like that. That's a scene. That would be amazing. And there's a few of those in the book.
That's the fun thing with this book is like, I feel like there's so many good scenes and like on their own, great visuals.
Oh yeah.
But the key here of what makes it a book is Oliver Doss. Oliver Doss's story does not work as well on the movie screen. Like it's not the narrative structure with that's what ties it all together. That's why he's the key reason why I'm like book for like that's why it's in the correct
all
medium.
Books are better than films.
That's all true.
Except Lord of the Rings. So
including Lord of the Rings.
Except Lord of the Rings. But no. that point I just want to emphasize too, we're still in the Prose section. We still got like 3 more minutes of your time. We booked it, okay? So last thing on this is the most compelling part about your Prose was the dialogue. Like I know we've been talking character voice, but even the curses or slang or idiosyncrasies and just how each character spoke, lovely. It was just fun to read. It was funny, fun, engaging. All right, I'm done. You guys won't hear another kind word from me ever again. Like I used all my kind words.
You used them all up, man.
Yep, that's it.
Here's the thing. It's I know how this will look at it. Especially we talked about this in a previous video about reviewers and bias and like what do you feel like when you see reviewers are like actually friends with an author and how does that actually affect like I understand. Like at this point we're quite close at this point. I'd call us friends. Absolutely. And so it's like, they're reviewing this book because they're friends. Maybe they would have a point if we released like a 15-minute review of like, hey, book good. And that's all we said about it. Maybe we are kind of hiding our opinion. We sat and talked for like now with over 2 videos, over 3 hours. Yeah. Talk about this book. I feel like we're pretty honest at this point. We've gotten all of our thoughts out.
It's really tough to sit next to you for that long. So
it's hard to fake it. Yeah. It's hard to fake an opinion for 3 hours.
Yeah.
That's difficult.
Well, also the main thing is too, anybody who's made it this far into the video, I think they're
they get it.
Yeah, but the other point to that too is I going into book 2 because let's end up with this. The excitement going into book 2. I'm going to attempt to temper my expectations as much as possible because now I don't want to go in being like, well,
They
You know,
floored me the first time.
it's
This
gonna have
better
to
be
get-
fresh and new.
So
it better be something complete. It better be completely different from book one, but also the same. This, you know.
So going into book two, whenever this does come out, I want to make a point of we're going to be fully honest again. You know what? If it's a 4.75, we'll lay it on you. We'll lay it on
Oh
you.
yeah, no, yeah. If the sophomore slump hits and it's a 4.75.
Thank you all three of you a bunch. I mean, a bunch of thanks constantly, and obviously love Discover. Can't wait for book two. Thank you for sitting here for several videos now. And
oh man, we had a great time.
You guys have given us so much kind attention.
This has been amazing.
Really amazing.
I can't wait. Well, thing is, this video is more of a we get to be the first ones, or not the first ones, but one of the first ones, and it's gonna blow up. You're gonna see a bunch of other booktubers cover this book. I know it. Like it'll happen.
We'll make sure we'll Howard Winfried them. We'll concoct it. We'll make sure it'll be delightful. But yes, thank you all again. Anything you guys want to conclude for anybody listening in?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean,
so much.
We're very blessed.
Thank you guys so
I mean,
much.
The people we've met and the people that have helped us, and
I don't mean that in the religious sense.
including you guys.
I mean that in a like in a community sense.
Yeah.
The community support's really amazing, and we couldn't have done it without the BookTube community.
Oh my God, this wouldn't exist. There's just no way.
So we thank you two for being a part of that. We
Yeah.
thank you for helping us get the word out, and we thank
And
you
for
your
rewriting at this point.
Yeah, it's for your rewrites. Thank you.
This was we love this. We really like to get deep when we can, and obviously with having 5 people on here and a book review, it was bound to be a deep ramble. And that was a true ramble. We went so off script of our system that we usually do, and I blame Jacob. So that's been all for today.
Well done,
I'll
son.
take it. I'll bear that blame.
You lean
I'm
into
okay
that
with it.
one. You lean into that pitch.
I will. I'll take the bullet. If Austin lets me take it, I'll take it.
There you go. Let him take it, Austin.
Rich, anything before concluding?
Well, if for some reason you didn't read the book and you listened to the whole spoiler section, go buy the book. I'm assuming you've read the book by now. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Bye-bye, all.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.